Good morning and welcome everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank the very Reverend Caroline Bailey from our division, so Thirlby as you know, to say prayers for us. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. You may sit. So good morning again, councillors, officers and any members of the public to our usual budgetary meeting, which takes a slightly different format, as most of us will remember. Before doing so, first of all, Chief Executive, Debbie, please may I have the apologies for absence.
Thank you very much. Good morning. We've received apologies from Councillor Alison Austin, Councillor Ian Carrington, Councillor Julie Killey, Councillor Sarah Parkin, Councillor Gary Taylor, Councillor Richard Wright. Thank you.
Chairman, Councillor Marfleet will be a little late, but he is coming.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so no more apologies, that's good, they're recorded. So, declarations of councillors' interest. I think most of us know the protocol that is here before us, but do any councillors have any further interest that they would like to declare, please? I see none. So, moving on to the minutes of the last County Council meeting on the 1st of December, which indeed seems a little while ago now. That the minutes of the meeting of the County Council held on the 1st of December be approved as a correct record and signed by the Chairman. Can I ask all in favour, please? Thank you very much. Those will be signed. Chairman's announcements, those have been circulated to you. Yesterday was an interesting occasion with the Lord Lieutenant and the Mayor of Lincoln in the coronation planting of a tree to mark Her Majesty the King and his reign. And indeed, I'm sure you would all agree with me that it was the coronation ceremony of the tree actually went with some words by the Lord Lieutenant, who said that they hoped that the longevity and the health of the tree would prosper just as much as our hearts and minds are with the King, and for his well-being too. I think that's just about the only thing that I have within the Chairman's announcements to add. It is now again with great sadness that I must report the death of County Councillor Robert Parker. And there is a second County Councillor, Mr. Knight, as well. But first of all, I know most people here will have their hearts and minds and with respect, gratitude and consideration for Councillor Robert Parker's family and indeed our own interactions with him here at Council. He represented, as we know, Lincoln West, the electoral division, later the Car Home division, and his election to the council in 1989 until his recent resignation owing to ill health. And he really did give everything he possibly could until that resignation came. He served as the leader of the council between 1993 and 1997, and as the leader of the Labour group for many years following this. I've also to report, as aforementioned, the death of a former county councillor, Brian Knight. Mr. Knight was elected to the county council in May 1997 and represented Gainsborough Rural South Division until 2005. I therefore now ask and invite you to stand for a minute's silence as a mark of respect to both gentlemen. I'd now like to take the opportunity to invite councillors to speak, and I know that Councillor Karen Lee would like to speak firstly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob played a huge part in this council, in the whole of the county. In his own ward, he was a superb Car Home Division councillor. And on the wider CCN network, he made a difference in so many ways. I think we all paid our tributes at the last council meeting, so I'm not proposing to repeat mine. I think what I would say is that they say, and I'm a strong believer in this, that as long as people are in your memories, they're in your hearts, you remember them and they're still with you. And that's true to a degree. And I have to say, given the number of alternative budgets that he must have prepared, I'm very much feeling the pressure this morning, and I'm hoping I do okay by him. But yeah, we remember you, Rob. We all remember you. Thank you.
Councillor Martin here.
Yes, I'd just like to say a few words about Brian Knight first. Who Brian, although yes, he was 8 years on the council, but also he was portfolio holder for a period as well, and he fought very hard in his patch and was very much supporting of Lincolnshire. I mean, as obviously we said a lot about Rob in the last council meeting, and it is apt actually, because I think the one thing I remember about Rob is the elegance and the very careful production of his alternative budgets, and the speeches were always well thought through, and actually were very convincing. But I have to say we didn't support any of them, but you couldn't help but admire the style and the craft. And I think Rob, we were never friends, but I think although with my first speech at this county council, his reply was, "That's the most useless contribution I've ever heard in a long time." But we got over that slight difficulty. I was a young, probably quite annoying whippersnapper then. We have some of those in our council nowadays. But actually, as things moved on, and Rob, obviously, he was leader for 4 years, and he was leader of the Labour group nearly for a whole period, apart from he very quickly became leader of the Labour group after being elected in 1989, and apart from one 4-year spell, he remained leader of the group. And I have to say, we had, although we weren't friends, I think we understood each other very well and had a mutual respect and understanding of each other. And I will miss the mental chess games we used to play in this chamber for many years. I think the other thing I would say, he was leader, and obviously it's never a good thing when you're ousted as leader, whatever way that happens. He took that with good grace, and whatever he did, although our political differences were quite large, at his heart he wanted the best for Lincolnshire, and he wanted the best for the county council. And that's why we, as a Conservative group, we were very pleased to support him as chairman of our Major Overview and Scrutiny Committee, a role which he undertook very well. And I think the other thing I would say, he was also very supportive of especially younger councillors, and irrespective of actually their politics, he was very, very happy to develop them. And I know there are councillors here today who he took them under their wing and actually helped them develop. So yes, he was a big figure in Lincoln, but also in this council, and he will be missed.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I think to add to that, his presentation and levelness in the motions that he put forward and the presentation he did them have been a great compliment and a legacy of good behaviour that he leaves behind for us all to remember. Councillor Phil Dilks, I understand you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would say during my first term, Councillor Knight was a member of this council. I didn't know him well, but my thoughts are with his family right now. I, of course, wanted to talk about my great friend, huge friend, very close friend, Rob Parker. I loved him to bits, frankly. He taught me a great deal. I came on this council in 2001. I knew him mildly before then, but not closely. As Karen and Martin, if I may say, have said, I won't sort of. I really welcome what you've both said about him. Thank you. But I will just finish before I sit down. Just say what I said actually when we all paid tributes to Rob when he stood down. Rob Parker was the best MP Lincoln never had. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you very much for those. So moving to today's business, item 5, statements by the leader, executive councillors, chairman of committees and subcommittees. I understand that there has been a statement circulated, and I know of. So, do any executive councillors or the chairman of committees and subcommittees wish to make a statement? Yes, I had a feeling that Councillor Colin David was going to poignantly start us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As many members of committees have heard me say, I've updated committees on the issues around flooding, and I wanted to update the council today just to make sure we all have the same information and the same data. Obviously, following the significant rainfall associated with storms Babette and Henk over this recent period, winter period, and of course further rainfall events not of the same significance, we have seen significant flooding issues across a very wide area of Lincolnshire. Clearly, this puts a massive strain on resources, and we are faced now with undertaking an unprecedented amount of investigation work in relation to these incidents. Members will be aware that as the lead local flood authority for the county, this council has a duty to investigate flooding in certain circumstances, such as when there is flooding internally to a residence or business, or where large swathes of agricultural land is effective or extensive and disrupting flooding of carriageways. Since Storm Babette last October, we have received reports of 850 internally flooded properties, which will require 230 separate investigations to establish the causes. When these investigations, known as Section 19 from the Floods and Water Management Act 2010, are completed, we will then identify which of the risk management authorities have a flood risk management function in connection with that flood, and whether they have exercised or intend to exercise that function in response to it. To assist with this, we will make recommendations for proportionate works to manage future flood risk to be delivered by the individual risk management authorities, or in partnership as considered appropriate or expedient. I would just add, I think all members have got issues in their particular areas, and I know many members have raised these at Flood and Drainage Scrutiny Committee, which is the correct process. I will say that the executive have already agreed some additional money to support the work around Section 19 and how we deal with some of the conclusions of that work. And I know the leader will have some more to say in the budget today about how we address this big challenge that is affecting the whole of the county. And I know that some members have concerns about the function of some of our agencies that are responsible, whether that is Environment Agency or Anglian Water. And these are, challenges for all organisations. Water has become a very, very big issue, and how we manage it, how we actually address the challenge it's causing for our agricultural sector going forward, bearing in mind the need for food security in our nation. These are big issues and big issues for the future, and I'm sure we'll have further debates and discussions. But I will continue to support, as will the Executive, the work of Councillor Ashton and the Flood and Drainage Scrutiny Committee in reviewing all these matters, and I would urge members, if you have any concerns, please raise them with Councillor Ashton to make sure that scrutiny review is complete and thorough for the whole of Lincolnshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I think the main issue that affects all members, and particularly in some worst affected areas right across, whether it be Tallington or Holbeach or wherever, is the stormwater situation and the problem with sewage disposal as well. And I know within the capacity of the Flood and Water Scrutiny Committee, we are looking at ways that we can hold individual wards, divisions to account with these authorities to actually move things forward, because that's what we really need to do for all of our communities. Thank you. Are there any other reports? I wasn't aware of any. Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item 6 then, we're going to take questions to the chairman, leader, the executive councillors and the chairman of committees and subcommittees insofar as it prevents the asking of questions at the annual budget meeting. I wish to move that the Council Procedure Rule 10.2 be suspended for the duration of item 6 on the agenda. No, it's been moved to item 6. Sorry, Vice Chairman. Are you going to second it?
I second, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. So can we now move to the vote, please, for the temporary suspension of this county procedural rule, please? All in favour? Still come. Thank you very much indeed. I'm aware of anxious time to allow good speed for questions across the chamber within the time allocated, and I intend to allow 45 minutes for questions in the usual manner. I'm expecting councillors to be disciplined because of the time available. When invited to ask their question, councillors, could you please press the button on your microphone, I'm sure you know the procedure, to make it live, and press it again once you have finished speaking, and I didn't say it at the beginning, but I know that Councillor Jackie Brockwell would remind me to say that the hearing loop will be on, and please be mindful of that situation. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so first of all, could I please call upon Councillor Paul Martin to ask our leader, Councillor Martin Hill, please. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, thank you. With uncertain future revenue for leisure services, can we have an update for the people of South Kesteven on the Deepings Leisure Centre?
Thank you for the question. As probably hopefully members are aware, the leisure centre, the building is owned currently by the County Council, and as probably members are aware, up till a few years ago was operating under a Chancellor Share scheme and operated by the District Council for a leisure centre. And as we probably all are aware now, the leisure centre had to close some years ago, and ever since then there's been a campaign to, certainly by the local people, to actually reinstate the leisure centre in the Deepings. I also understand that there was a recent meeting of South Kesteven District Council where they voted to allocate, I think, 850,000 to support the community group to save the Deepings Leisure Centre, and I think that decision has been reserved back to the Cabinet at SKDC. Obviously, it is our building, so I thought it's appropriate to update the Council on where we stand, and members also might recall that the Executive and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee both voted that we also wish to do all we could to support the retention of reinstatement of a leisure centre in the Deepings. We have made that, and obviously that was made clear to SKDC members before they took the vote. That position still remains the case. I think there is a problem because certainly from our perspective, and I think probably from looking at the report that went to SKDC, there are still some issues and concerns about the business case that the community group there have put forward. There is only one expression of interest for taking on the leisure centre, that's from the Deepings Community Interest Group. And despite repeated requests and extensions from ourselves, I have to say from our property team and are still not convinced, shall we say, that the business case proposed by the community group will actually be sustainable and enable the leisure centre to continue. And I know that having read the report that went to South Case Council, I think there are also concerns there, which I think is why the executive there have been asked to make the final decision. I think that gives us all a problem because we all want to try and save the leisure centre there because it was a well-valued and well-liked facility in the Deepings. So we have a problem, of course, and I think I have now written to the leader of South Kesteven District Council, Councillor Ashley Baxter, to offer a solution in that we would be prepared to hand over the leasehold of the leisure centre to SKDC with a substantial sum, which hasn't been formally decided by this council yet, but there is a certain willingness on behalf of the executive, and obviously this will be subject to scrutiny, that would, as a dowry, we would also hand money over, because not only are there issues with the business case, there's a complication with getting permission off the Department for Education from government. It's quite difficult when you've got two players trying to bring everything together, so we made this offer to South Kesteven District Council, so we'll hand it over with a dowry, and then obviously then they can then try and sort it out, because I think everybody wants to save the Deepings Leisure Centre, but I think more work definitely needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader, and we wish every success to you Deepings people, and I know it's in hearts and minds for the community as well as everybody else, so there we go. Right, so question 2, please. Councillor Colin Matthews to Councillor Colin Davey, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Colin. I'm asking this question on behalf of Huttoft Parish Council, Rigsby-cum-Ailby Parish Council, Alford Town Council, and Bilsby with Farthorpe Parish Council and their residents. However, this is not simply a parochial issue. The concerns I'm going to raise are directly pertinent to residents in the following divisions: Saltfleet and the Coats, Louth North, Louth South, Louth Wolds, Mablethorpe, Alford and Sutton, Ingermells Rural, Skegness South, Wainfleet, Tattershall Castle, Boston Rural, Boston South, Donington Rural, Spalding East, Spalding Ellow.
Can I interrupt there and say all the East Coast members, please? I think that might be
No,
more
well, let me
appropriate.
finish, because there's just three more: Holbeach Rural, Spalding West and Spalding South. I appreciate it's a long list, but this is not a trivial issue, and it affects a huge swathe of Lincolnshire. I will provide a full list of wards and councillors to you, Mr Chairman, after the meeting. Colin, you have seen the full letter of objection from Huttoft Parish Council. I'll pull out the key points. The Parish Council strongly opposes the current proposals as set out in National Grid's Stage 1 consultation. The proposed pylons will have a significant negative impact on the local countryside and areas of outstanding natural beauty in and around the Lincolnshire Wolds. The proposed height will mean the pylons will be seen from many miles away. In fact, one of my residents' houses will see every single pylon. The Parish Council is genuinely concerned about potential future developments at the two proposed massive substations, or I don't know if that's the right word, Colin, you can clarify this. We know that National Grid are planning to use these substations, converter stations, battery storage facility stations to link at least two massive offshore wind farm supplies for Scotland and at least 5 further as yet uncontracted offshore wind farms. The Parish Council would like to have more knowledge about the unknown implications these may have for residents in the local area.
Can I remind you that we would like to have a reply from Colin Davey, and you've nearly been 3 minutes.
Please, can you answer some of the questions, Colin? Thank you, Chair.
Thank
you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Matthews, for the question. Obviously, members are aware that this is a massive infrastructure proposal for the entire coastline of Lincolnshire, stretching from Grimsby down to Walpole. The Parish Council has rightly raised some significant concerns. Firstly, consultation should be about options. There are 3 options proposed by National Grid, but they discount 2 of them because they say they're not affordable. Well, that's not really consultation, quite honestly, in my book. Obviously, the points raised is this is just the beginning of what could be a massive change to the entire coastline of Lincolnshire. Pylons, if built with substations, will need additional converter stations. We are aware of at least 5 new offshore wind farms, which will need to connect to the grid. We're aware also of a subsea proposal by National Grid to bring the wind farm power from Scotland down through the seabed into Lincolnshire to connect to the grid there. All of this is nonsense, really. This is a 20th century solution for a 22nd century challenge. And National Grid really need to go away and redesign what they're proposing and look at the offshore option, the subsea option. The Dutch are doing it. They're building substations offshore. There's even a proposal off the Scottish coast for substations offshore. So we're quite clear. You know, our response, which you have seen, which is part of our policy position, is that we'll not be supporting any pylons in Lincolnshire along the eastern seaboard of the county. And we will be saying to National Grid very clearly, they need to go away, they need to think again, and they need to redesign. We will support National Grid and work with them as we have done with other companies in the past who've come up with silly ideas, and we've had to tell them that's not acceptable for Lincolnshire, and they've gone and redesigned. And we did that with Tritton Knoll. As some members will know, we had pylons and substations proposed then. They took it away when we said we weren't going to play ball with them. So we'll be saying the same to National Grid.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davey. I think what I pick up from that is we pray for speed of succeeding the current arrangements rather than going away. Can I call upon Councillor Murray, please, now to ask a question that he has to Councillor Richard Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Davis for agreeing to meet me later on regarding some issues in the West End area of Lincoln. at the heart of the car home division. You may not be surprised to know that since I requested that meeting, I've been overwhelmed by residents in the area who've raised a lot of highway issues, including speeding, pedestrian safety and on-street parking. So I might be asking you for another meeting.
Yeah, very happy to meet you this afternoon, Neil, and we can look at some of those other issues as well. Perfect timing.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Richard Cleaver, please, for Councillor Danny McNally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The implementation in Stamford of the county-wide policy of only collecting bagged recycling waste once every 4 weeks is causing considerable inconvenience to the very many town centre residents who are unable to accommodate wheelie bins and instead are forced to use bags for their waste. Many residents have approached me and asked that the weekend waste collection service from a town centre car park, which was abolished in 2021, should now be reinstated as one of a number of measures to help overcome this problem. It is completely unacceptable to expect Stamford residents to make a round trip of over an hour to the nearest recycling centre at Bourne at their own expense because their recycling is now only collected once every 4 weeks. Will he now commit to the reintroduction of this weekend service and assist in quickly implementing other measures to solve this problem? Thank you.
Councillor Danny McNally.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The decision was made a long time ago that it's not coming back. By all means, you know, before SK used their own lorries and bin lorries, you're quite welcome to ask your leader in front of you if he wants to do that. And that's about it, really.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Mike Clark, I understand you have a question for Councillor Richard Boothroyd, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My question, I have some concerns on the number of staff leaving during the year, which was just over 9%. I feel this is rather a high figure. How does this compare to other authorities? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I went back and did a bit of digging around, and we've got, with the 8 local authorities around us, their average over the last 12 months was 9.8 staff turnover over that period. So LCC sit at 9.17, so we're slightly below the trend there. So I think overall it's a positive message. We worked very hard over the last few years with regards to retention of staff and making sure we've got the right offer to attract people to LCC as well. So I think it's good for our team and our staff that we are below the average, but there's obviously more to do, and we keep working on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Noyce here, please. I understand has a question for our leader, Councillor Martin Hill.
Thank you, Chair. My question to Martin is, quite worrying concern of me. The East Coast of Lincolnshire have recently got big company and government trying to spoil our countryside, and seem to be what that word? I don't like posh word. Potential of carbon capsule, nuclear waste, solar panel, now is pylon. How we can stop the massive invasion of the project to take over our countryside and seaside resort? I'm very worried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. I mean, obviously, I think Councillor Davies answered substantially the question particularly about the pylons, but as members are aware, certainly in Lincolnshire, we do almost seem to be under attack at the moment in terms of large infrastructure projects, be it all the list, be it solar farms, potential onshore wind, reservoirs, you name it. There's, as we well all know from our own areas, all the time, there are companies approaching landowners to see if they can do some resources. So there is a lot of going on, and I think like Councillor Davey, well, I think we've got to accept stuff will have to happen and things need to move forward. But certainly there is a challenge here of a balance between not only food production and other national prerequisites, but also the beauty of the Lincolnshire countryside. And as with many other things, you know, a bit of something's okay, but when you get, for example, areas of Lincolnshire which are almost going to be blotted out by large-scale solar farms, I mean, it does become an issue. And I think as a policy position, I know Councillor Davies working up something where on the one hand we can be realistic about the prospects that stuff will need to happen, but it needs to happen in a way that is not injurious to the countryside, and as much as possible it should be done in a way which preserves the great heritage of this county. It is a challenge, and I suppose the other frustration is most of this stuff is not for the benefit of Lincolnshire residents. It goes elsewhere to other parts of the country where it is. So I think trying to protect our heritage and our environment is very important, and it's something we will continue to work on and fight the corner to make sure that Lincolnshire is just not left carrying all these projects, as it nearly was years ago when we had a regional assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Karen Lee, please, has a question for Councillor Patricia Bradwell.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm not really expecting a definitive answer today, Trish. It's more about putting down a marker, really. On the Ermine East, we've got a growing problem with e-scooters. I've been contacted by email by a few people, and it's a hot topic on the Facebook group, believe me. And at first I thought, oh, they're exaggerating it, because I hadn't seen that many of them. And then one day I was out leafleting, and I was coming up a driveway, as you do, folding the next leaflet, not really looking where you're going, stepped out onto the path, not the road, and I nearly got knocked down by one that going at considerable speed, actually, and if it had got me, it would have hurt me. But so it is a growing problem, and I contacted the police, and first of all, they've got real staffing shortages, haven't they, everywhere? You know, someone's off sick, they've only got this person, so monitoring of it was going to be hard work. So basically, my question is, the ASB team that we hopefully will have after today's meeting, have we got any idea when that's going to be up and running? Because I want to get my foot in the door quickly and get them onto this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. I don't know whether my highways colleague has anything to do with e-scooters. We definitely don't. But I'll pass you over to Rich in a minute. But with regards to the ASB, it's still in the planning stage. So we will be coming back with that. You know, we just feel that it's a big issue across the county in hotspots. It's not everywhere ASB. So we'll be coming back with a paper to go to scrutiny and then come here. Okay. Pass you over to...
Thank you. Excuse me. Yeah, no, it's fine. I wasn't eating, honestly. No, it is an interesting one. The problem comes with electric vehicles as to what grade of vehicle they are. So a Type 3 motor vehicle, which most of them aren't, does need to be insured and taxed to be on the road. There is a real grey area between, and again, e-scooters aren't licensed for ownership to ride, but you can hire them. Electric mobility vehicles are licensed. They technically are legal on the pavement, I believe, but it's a real grey area. You're not the only person to have been subject to this. They're particularly prevalent on the East Coast where we have an older population. I know personally of a number of incidents where people have been severely injured by them to the point of kind of law enforcement getting involved in legal actions. I think nationally we're waiting for clear guidance from government as to what can be done. Because as much as I don't want to see them on the pavement, I would be nervous kind of going around the Lincoln bypass to find a parade of mobility scooters on there. That could be equally dangerous for them. So it's a difficult patch.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Marion Overton, please. I understand you have a question that you'd like to ask Colin Davey.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the comments earlier, both on flooding and on the solar panels, which I appreciated. The things I would like to ask about is the internal drainage boards are currently directly putting their hands in our pockets effectively from across the county to take the funds they need to actually clear the land of floodwater so that it doesn't destroy our crops, which is obviously extremely expensive and damaging on the nation's food security. So I was at the House of Parliament, as were some other members here today, and we are looking for support to tackle the government on a long-term solution to the funding of internal drainage boards. And I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for that question. And absolutely, we all understand the role the drainage boards play in looking after our land, and draining our land is incredibly important. They're part of our formal partnership. However, the point you raise is absolutely correct. Those district councils that have to deal with drainage board levies are now spending a massive proportion of their precept in doing so. There needs to be a national solution. There's been a one-off settlement again with some of a little bit of additional money, but that is not solving the problem. I'm very clear, and I've written to the Prime Minister, I've written to the Chancellor, I've written to the Floods Minister on this matter, urging that they come up with a permanent, sustainable solution so that district councils can do the role that they are supposed to do, and drainage authorities can do the role with the proper funding that they need to undertake. So we are very clear as a council, there needs to be a solution, and whoever is in government needs to address it, and address it urgently.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matt Bowles, please, has a question to Patricia Bradwell. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bradwell, Gainsborough Adventure Playground in my division has been running for 50 years last year, providing outstanding care and opportunities, including a number of LCC-led schemes over the years to some of the most underprivileged and disadvantaged children, not only in Gainsborough but in the wider Lincolnshire community. Unfortunately, the organisation recently lost a large amount of its core funding from Children in Need, which has resulted in play workers being made redundant and provisions removed, much to the heartbreak and devastation of staff and local families. Would it be possible for you to arrange for the appropriate LCC officers to meet with the GAPA trustees and myself as soon as possible to see what help, support, guidance, maybe possibly funding, can be provided to ensure this much loved and valued provision continues to serve our young children for another 50 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bowles. Well, yes, we can come over and see you and see what we can do, any ideas on funding, but actually I thought district councils did play areas and parks and that, but definitely we can come over and we'll bring a couple of officers with us, and we can talk through what we can do. Sometimes there's grants and that available across the country, not from government but from other organisations, so we'll get some information and come over and we'll arrange to see you. Okay?
Thank you very much. Councillor Andrew Key, please. Question for Colin Davey. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I currently, too, have multiple flooding issues across my division. Little Hale is a lovely village near Heckington and is a prime example of that, with several floods in just the last couple of weeks. These end up closing the main road, which is a vital route in and out of the village and a through route for many others. And they maroon people in their homes. Not least of all, it's very distressing for those that are involved. Please could I ask Colin, our Executive Councillor, to tell my residents how Lincolnshire County Council is taking the lead to get this issue sorted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Key, for the question. I'm not going to repeat what I said in my statement earlier, but I will say just in specifics around Little Hale. I can confirm, firstly, that Highways staff are visiting your community next week. They're going to bring a jetter. They're going to undertake some preliminary investigations, and that will be ahead of the formal Section 19 investigation for the whole community. I'll be hopeful that they'll quickly identify the root cause of the issues in your community, and then we can work towards a long-term understanding of how we solve it. And as you know, in our budget proposals today that the leader will present shortly, that we have an allocation of money for investigations, delivery of schemes to make sure we can solve some of these challenges. So I'm looking forward to giving you some positive news about how we're actually going to address this long term. But as an authority, we are investing more money into this area to conduct the work, and we're investing more money to deliver solutions for communities. And between myself and Councillor Davis, we're working on a number of other solutions to actually solve some of the other challenges around surface water and flooding generally. So rest assured, we're on the job in relation to actually finding the solutions, and your community can rest assured we're going to be looking at their challenges next week.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley Baxter, I understand that you have a question you'd like Richard Davis to answer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I really welcome the proposed additional budget allocation of millions towards highways, drainage and jetting in the budget that we're talking about later on this morning. I'm really grateful also for the time and resources offered to Tallington and Gretford and all communities in recent weeks. Several weeks after Storm Henk, in Tallington there are still properties which are flooded today. At least 2 were flooded last night, and several other houses still lack functioning toilets. Tallington faces a triple whammy that has meant, first, the rain and the increase in groundwater and surface water is causing floods. Secondly, the Anglian water systems find it impossible to shift the foul water and sewage due to a combination of the ingress of surface water and also to the capacity of the downstream sewage system. But the third problem, and the focus of my question, is the obvious problem with the LCC highways drains, which have been known about for several years, which mean surface water entering the drains has nowhere to go. 2 years ago, a partnership between Anglian Water and LCC began to address the problem, but I can tell you with confidence that the problem has not gone away. Can you please reassure me and the residents in my division that the Council is prepared to continue to work hard with the Parish Council, Anglian Water, to make sure the problem of LCC drainage in Tallington is properly and permanently fixed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and it's very serious. Tallington has seen some of the worst flooding in the area, there's no doubt about it. And in fact, there's a meeting today. We've got highways officers on the ground, meeting with Anglian Water, meeting with members of the local community, looking at issues. Broadly, you've outlined the problem succinctly, so I won't go over old ground. There are issues in terms of the capacity of the network. When the work was done with Anglian Water, I think 2 years ago, it was agreed that we would use their backhaul system to try and move the water away. Of course, when you've got an awful lot of surface water flooding, that system is now at capacity. So I think Anglian Water are aware that more needs to be spent to do further upgrades. When they did the work, it was only ever going to be a stopgap. We've got emergency gullies have been on site. Fresh gully cleansings have gone out this morning to try and keep the surface water down so it doesn't build up. We do need a bit of dry weather, but you absolutely have my assurance. We'll continue to work with all the agencies down there to try and alleviate this problem so it doesn't keep happening.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Alexander Morn, I understand you have a question for Leader. Councillor Martin Hill, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Residents in my division continue to be disappointed by the lack of action from National Highways for urgently needed safety improvements to the A1. Our stretch of the A1 in Lincolnshire is highlighted as a priority area for safety works, and specifically the Tollbar Road junction at Marston. In the letter from the Roads Minister received through my local MP, I understand that funding for these promised improvements between Great Gunnerby in my division and Ecclesea in the north has now been withdrawn due to cost pressures elsewhere in National Highways. The funding for these improvements is now being reconsidered for the next road investment period 2025 to 2030. I'd like to ask the Leader of the Council what further support he can give to our local campaign for A1 road safety, and will he commit to writing to the Roads Minister to raise these concerns on our behalf?
Thank you very much. I think a very valid question, and certainly we will do. As Councillor Morn is aware, this has been a long-standing campaign by all the MPs along that stretch of the A1 in Lincolnshire and in Nottinghamshire. And it is very disappointing this has happened. And it wasn't that long ago that Councillor Davies and I met with the Roads Minister, with the local MPs, and I have to say it was a very disappointing meeting. I think we're all aware of the problems with the A1. I live on the A15, and it's amazing how many times it's suddenly clogged with traffic because yet again the A1 has closed. There is a safety issue. There are serious safety issues there in terms of the length of the slip roads off the A1 in various places, and really considering there is now money available from the from the retraction from the HS2, extra money available. It is very disappointing that the A1 wasn't considered important enough, because as we all know, that stretch between between Colsterworth and between Peterborough and Doncaster is in urgent need of a serious upgrade, and you can have my assurance, myself and Councillor Davis will be lobbying current ministers and any future ministers that this situation does need to be resolved, and resolved before too long.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I'll get Councillor Kev Clark. I'll get your Christian name right today as well, Councillor Clark. I understand you have a question, please, for Councillor Patricia Bradwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for getting my name right this time. Councillor Bradwell, at a recent Governor's school meeting I attended, the absent statistics were reported. Looking into this, it appears if a child leaves a school, possibly moving to another part of the country, he or she is still registered to that school until they re-register at a new school. Apparently, this is not a one-off case, and simply a child can disappear out the education system, and thus the welfare of that child comes into question. Can you supply the number of children affected by this situation, and also inform me how the authority are addressing this issue? Thank you.
I wasn't aware it was a big issue across the county, but I will ask the director when I meet with her on, I don't know, a meeting today or on Monday, but one of them. But I understand there is a national system of there is an annual system where children who have moved on from one school and not registered, so they would be picked up nationally, that they're not in school. I'm not aware that it is a huge problem in Lincolnshire with children moving on and the school not knowing where they've been registered to. But obviously we can look into this, and I'll come back to you. But no, obviously we are, the government and we are as well, really keen on the safeguarding of children, because actually you're quite right, a child could disappear, and if we hadn't got these ways of checking, then we don't really know. It's not good. It's not good. I won't go into detail, but it's not good. So yeah, I'll come back to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ron Gibson, please. You have a question for Councillor Colin Davey.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Davies already answered most of the question, to be fair. Can I just thank you for your comments against the National Grid proposals and your proposal to make representations to National Grid to consider an offshore option. Can I ask if you will also be making or raising the issue with the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero? The residents of South Holland are very concerned about this situation. We back you with your proposal on this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the question, and of course we'll be raising the matter with the government ministers concerned with this matter. I'd also say that where you are in the south of the county, we've had the conversation earlier about how important the coastal tourism industry is and how negative the proposal will be towards that sector. But where you are, we've got some of the most important prime agricultural land in the country. The impact on what is one of the finest landscapes, it may not be designated in the way the Wolds is, but the fenland landscapes are of critical importance in my view as well. The landscapes of Turner and Constable, should be protected and looked after for future generations. So therefore, I think your MP, John Hayes, is leading the campaign group of MPs in Parliament, and you'll be aware he asked a question in the House of the Minister the other day. So I think, we have a proper campaign. What we now need to do is turn that into a real message to National Grid and to the government that they need to think again and deliver the options that we know will be best for the country, best for the future of our areas, and ultimately best for the consumer, because all of this is going to cost the consumer a lot of money, and it will go on every single person's bill in Lincolnshire to pay for it. So yes, we'll be writing to the Minister.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ian Fleetwood, please. You have a question for Richard Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. We've talked a lot about flooding this morning. I think I, as County Councillor, have the most flooded area in Lincolnshire. Currently at Short Ferry, it's been underwater for 67 days. The road is covered with 3 to 4 feet of water. This has meant a diversion. However, the issue attached to it is the road running alongside it is Bardney Causeway. And Bardney Causeway has also been closed, which has meant a major diversion to the east side of Lincoln. The net result of this is, in the last week or so, there's been roadworks conducted out there. They've been conducted, performed, and they've been delivered well on time. So I'd like to thank you for that. And the local residents do respect the work that's been done on the eastern end of Bardney Causeway, but it's the western end that still remains in a perilous state. And the big question is, it's very dangerous to motorcyclists and others. When will that area of road be repaired?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, it's been terribly affected, your particular area, and I'd like to thank residents for bearing with us, because they've had a number of issues compounding, flooding, road repairs, and the subsequent knock-on damage it's done to the roads is quite horrendous when you go out and see it, as I know you have firsthand. We don't have a firm date for the far end of Bardney Causeway. Colleagues may not appreciate how long a road it is, but what a key stretch of the road network it is in the Bardney area. Having done the worst end, we are going to, over the next few months, make our way down the end, but I can't give you any firm guarantees on timescale yet. As soon as we've got that, I will let you know, though.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phil Dilks, I understand you have a word also for Councillor Richard Davies.
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Richard. Over 2.5 years ago, on the 17th of September 2021, this council discussed and unanimously supported a motion tabled by my colleague, Councillor Richard Cleaver. I quote from the record: "This council agrees to refer to the council's Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee consideration of the council's speed limit policies in relation to the use of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and how the council can assess and appropriately support communities who want to design and put in place a 20's Plenty campaign, and propose any changes to the council's speed limit policies accordingly." Over 2 years on, can you please tell me what progress has been made to date to respond to this unanimous resolution of the council? Thank you.
Thank you. I would point out, somewhat to my disappointment, I don't control scrutiny in the council. I wish it was just me making these decisions, but apparently we have these broad things called democratic principles we must adhere to. But you are right, all joking aside, Councillor Cleaver, and and it has been mentioned numerous occasions. The latest information I have, and I would underline that I don't control the scrutiny process, is that the scrutiny panel that is reviewing this is meeting on the 1st of May. They've already asked, as part of the pre-briefing for that, for information on the impact of 20-mile-an-hour zones, where they've been tried, where they haven't, what is the process, and how they could work. So that will be discussed by the scrutiny panel. One thing I would add, that we already have 20-mile-an-hour zones in the county. We already have a process to put them in as part of our speed management policy. They are assessed on an individual basis. There are a number of locations around the county that have them. I think they work with varying degrees of success, depending on how they're delivered. But there is an opportunity for communities to have them now. And on the 1st of May, the next meeting of the scrutiny panel will be reviewing this exact query in detail.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, question, please, from Councillor Mark Whittington for Councillor Dan McNally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor McNally, you're probably aware of some recent problems that have happened in South Castleven with their implementation of the sort of new recycling regime, introduction of the purple lidded bins for paper and card. There, unfortunately, have been quite a few rumours kind of circulating around social media and other outlets in the Grantham area over the last few days, which to the effect that this was a scheme that was imposed on South Kesteven District Council by the County Council. I was just wondering, Councillor Manelli, if you could clarify the exact role the Lincolnshire County Council has played regarding this policy, and also what are the requirements and what is SK's responsibility. Just to clarify, so some of these rumours that have been imposed by the County Council can be scotched. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Quite a long one, but obviously they've got the Environment Act that sort of, we have to lower the contamination rates, increase recycling, and there was a, going back a fair few years now, a meeting of the Waste Partnership, which is all district councils and the county council. So at that meeting, it was agreed that each district will implement the paper and card bins, and that was just an agreement. Then we have the governance side of it, where when each district is ready for implementing it, they will take it to their relevant executive to approve it at their council, because every council's sovereign, and then LCC will, some of the officers do help with the sort of the communications side of things and everything else, but ultimately, what you're saying, was it foisted upon anyone by LCC? No, it wasn't. It was an agreement by every district.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, thank both councillors and executive members for their responses. I did think we might need extra time, which I was going to be prepared to allow since we have no motions today, but we haven't needed it, so that's great. So, councillors, officers and members of the public, the main body of today's meeting is the council budget of 2024-2025 and a report by the Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director of Resources has been circulated together with a separate document entitled Council Budget 24-25. An amendment by the Shadow Executive has been submitted, if I may say so, and I propose to deal with this item outlined in the order of proceedings and have one debate, and therefore I'd like to move the housekeeping rules that there be one debate on the Executive's budget proposals and the amendment by the Shadow Executive, and therefore that the Council procedure rules of 13.4, content and length of speeches, 13.6b, 13.6c, 13.6d, 13.6e, amendments to the motions, and 13.10b, the motions which may be moved during the debate, be temporarily suspended for the duration of the debate, and that the debate takes place as set out on page 4 of the order of proceedings. Can I call for a seconder, please?
I second, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. So, can we now vote on the temporary suspension of the county procedural rules, please? All in favour? Hopefully. Yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. I wish also to remind members about the rules of debate as set out in the rules of 13.5 and 13.9 of the Council Procedure Rules, which have not been suspended. These are set out as in paragraphs 1 and 2 on pages 5 of the Order of Proceedings, except those that are set out in Rules 13.5 and 13.9. Councillors are only allowed to speak once during a debate. Therefore, the motion of any amendments will proceed as one debate. The debate will take place, the debate will take the form as set out in paragraphs A to G on pages 5 to 9 of the order of proceedings. To that end, can I ask Councillor Hill, where is he? Oh, right, okay. Councillor Hill, Leader, would you like to move the budget, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just checking the sound levels are okay. Very good. Good morning, everybody. So I'll now, Chairman, I'll now start my presentation. As we once again prepare our budget for the next year, it is worth reflecting that over many years, external instability has become the new normal. From the 2008 financial crash that was inevitably followed by austerity, then the uncertainty caused by both the Scottish and Brexit referenda, and just when progress seemed to be on the horizon, the COVID pandemic struck, with the subsequent conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East. It is then to our credit then that this Council has maintained a sure footing throughout this period, working towards bold ambitions for Lincolnshire and protecting frontline services. It's thanks to our careful financial management over the years that I will today announce extra investment in the areas that matter most to our residents. Following additional government funding, we have looked to boost areas that will make a real difference to our residents' everyday lives. I'm delighted we're in a position to continue investing in our communities when many other councils are struggling simply to make ends meet. I'll just drop this down a bit. Internationally, inflation has reduced considerably from its peak, and in the UK, our rate has reduced from 11.1% in October 22 to around 4% now, with a further predicted fall to 2% next year, which is good news. Inflation has had a significant direct impact on our costs, but has also impacted on government spending. The UK government, along with many others, is facing a mounting debt problem, as well as increased demand from the NHS, military, and policing, among others. If they are protected within a tight fiscal environment, it means unprotected sectors, such as local government, will face a disproportionate burden financially, as well as increasing demands. We are in a stronger financial situation than many other similar local councils, but there have been other authorities who have gone from a strong financial position to a very vulnerable one in a short space of time, so we must not be complacent. It is perhaps no surprise that we have once again been granted a one-year financial settlement, making it difficult to make long-term budget decisions, so we will continue to lobby the government for multi-year settlements. It also means that overdue and necessary national reforms in areas like social care and special educational needs have been delayed. Without this, most councils, including ourselves, will eventually run out of financial road, and it is imperative that national decisions are taken so these services are sustainable. We already face the challenge of statutory demand-led services taking a high and increasing proportion of our budget. This leaves less room for popular and necessary areas like highways maintenance, flood protection, community safety, and economic development. In January, the government announced an additional one-year funding for local councils. I welcome the extra 8.4 million for social care that this will bring to Lincolnshire, which is the result of a very effective CCN campaign that we supported. We have campaigned for some time that it now costs more to run services in rural counties like ours with a large geographical area, large road network, and ageing population. This additional funding is welcome acknowledgement of our case. Aside from the extra investment, a potential devolution deal could bring to our area a more equitable funding settlement would greatly ease our challenges. Fairer funding arrangements need to be sorted out before the next Parliament. It is clear that this council is run efficiently and effectively, with a relatively low government funding allocation and low council tax levels for residents. We do a lot with what we have, and we do it well. In the 24-25 financial year, we expect to spend over £650 million on providing a wide range of vital services. As has been our proven strategy, we will continue to protect our frontline services that residents rely on. The Council has managed to find around £9 million in savings by reducing bureaucracy and streamlining operations through the use of new technology. However, we still face an additional £61 million in cost pressures from rising prices and increased demand for services, including around £6 million for the unexpected increase in the national living wage. To fund this for next year and beyond, we need to increase council tax to meet the shortfall. 2% of the increase precept will exclusively be spent on adult care services. While we can only still set our budget 1 year at a time, and with the uncertainties we face in the future, rapidly running down our reserves is not a sustainable option. We know that household budgets are still tight for many residents. Uncertainty over future costs and income for the organisations who support them is also a challenge. That's why we have committed to 3 years of funding for the county's Citizens Advice Service under a new grant agreement from 2024. Starting at £300,000 this year, funding will increase annually in line with the national living wage. As the largest area of council spending in adult care, we pay for around 7,000 beds in long and short-term care settings and in excess of 4 million hours of commissioned community-based support. All this, as well as other preventative and specialised services. Over the next year, we will be spending more in every area of the service, including covering the 9.8 increase in the national living wage, which is the core component of the rate the council pays for commissioned care. A double whammy of the COVID recovery and cost of living challenges, that means we are all now seeing an increase in demand for residential care, with a 21% increase in people who had previously self-funded in their care costs, who are now unable to do so. Around 70% of our public health costs are spent on preventative health service for adults, and the Lincolnshire Health and Wellbeing Board have agreed council funding of £359 million from the county's Better Care Fund for next year. This money pays for services that help residents stay well. Spend in areas such as community equipment services, reablement services, and mental health provision prevent more acute and costly health and care interventions like hospital stays and emergency incidents. Across children's service, we will be spending £10 million more than last year. This reflects cost pressures and increased demand for children's social care faced by councils across the whole country. More funding has been allocated to meet these challenges, including increased payment to our much valued foster carers. This year's budget includes £8 million for SEND support and additional funding for overnight short breaks provision with children with disabilities. More than £98 million will be spent on children's social care this year, protecting our most vulnerable children and young people and enhancing their opportunities. More than £6 million will be spent on supported accommodation and services for those leaving care, and £4.5 million on targeted support for young people, including youth offending interventions. This year we'll see the expansion of the Apprentices Social Work Scheme, which will help us attract and retain more social workers, and the running of the 2 new children's homes, providing better outcomes for children and young people. Lincolnshire has been chosen as one of the 3 national Families First for Children Pathfinders, receiving £6.3 million from the Department of Education in recognition that we are an innovative transformational authority. Our highways revenue spend for 24-25 is £48.8 million, in addition to the £80.6 million capital budget for highways maintenance. This is £800,000 more than last year and comes in the wake of our own 19 million additional funds that we put into road maintenance last year. It is clear that we have put a huge amount of effort into keeping Lincolnshire moving, repairing more than 100,000 potholes and rebuilding many miles of roads and footpaths over the past year, but there is more to do. That's why today I'm announcing an extra £2.5 million for highways improvements, in addition to the unprecedented money this council has previously put into road maintenance. This latest local funding boost further shows how seriously we take the condition of our roads. Keeping our county moving is hugely important for the people of Lincolnshire, and that's something we continue to work extremely hard to achieve. The extra money will go towards making more improvements to roads and footpaths across the county so that residents and businesses will see a very real uplift in how they get about. Despite inflationary pressures on road building materials and equipment, we are doing more with the funding we do have by improving our own use of data to work more efficiently and being more robust in finding third parties who damage the highway. The measures we put in place during the 2016 streetlight transformation project are now resulting in around £6 million of savings compared to what we would be spending now per year had we not gone ahead with the LED and park light plans. Meanwhile, we will also be spending £66 million on transport services as we meet our statutory requirements, providing school transport and concessionary bus fares. This includes an additional £3.2 million needed this year for educational transport. Of more than £30 million spent in environment and economy, around £22 million will be spent on disposing of the county's waste. Again, inflation has had a marked effect on our household waste recycling centre contracts, increasing costs by nearly £1.2 million. New requirements for storing and moving hazardous material increases operational costs by a further £250,000. However, these increases are offset by further savings from the continued rollout of separate paper and card collections and a short-term saving from energy generated from our energy from waste plant. Our budget also maintains our day-to-day service that supports businesses to start up, grow and relocate to Lincolnshire and support the right developments in the right place across our county. In recent months, there have been a series of unprecedented flooding incidents which have had a significant impact on our communities. The ongoing risk of flooding is increasing, and as lead flood authority, we have a key role in identifying where measures can be put in place to mitigate this. Therefore, in December, the executive decided to set aside an additional £4 million for major flood alleviation schemes following investigations. Today, I can confirm that we will put an extra £1 million towards that budget for design and implementation, and an extra £2 million for jetting and clearing drainage in areas with recurring flooding. Our green agenda is an important issue for all of us in Lincolnshire. That's why today I'm announcing £1 million to accelerate our Green Master Plan sustainability projects, work to encourage and support green tourism, and improving public rights of way. The Council had allocated more than £4 million on our work to keep communities safe. Although Lincolnshire is a safe place to live, we know that at times antisocial behaviour can affect residents' quality of life. So I'm announcing today that the County Council has committed an additional £1 million towards efforts to reduce antisocial behaviour in our communities. The budget for Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue is now just over £25 million, increased to allow for the commissioning of a new fire control system. We've also earmarked more than £7.5 million in capital investment in our fire service, in the new control room system, equipment and fleet, ensuring the response to our county emergencies remains strong. Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue are often on the front line when the worst happens and have been much praised for their actions during recent flood events. Therefore, you will be pleased to know that as part of the additional funding I've announced today for flood prevention and protection, 400,000 is included to help crews with new equipment to help them better deal with flooding. We are committed to seeing our library service partnerships thrive. These arrangements offer great value for money and therefore will be providing additional funding to the contract this year. In other areas, a small increase in the budget for the Coroner's Office will also help sustain the progress that service has made. Our heritage services contribute to our tourism offer, providing a significant positive economic impact, as well as providing great learning and well-being spaces to those who live here. Effective revenue generation, such as from the successful Lincoln Castle illuminated event and third-party events, are great for visitors and help us to deliver the service on budget. We have now taken over £1 million in online payments for our ceremonies, a great improvement. This investment in digital processes now delivers a better customer service, reducing staff workload, and it saves money. I'm often asked what the County Council is doing to invest in Lincolnshire. I'm pleased to say that our capital spend has been fair and well distributed across every district of the county, and this will continue to be the case. From investment in extra care housing, extensions to Business Park, new firefighting equipment, new and refurbished SEND schools, and of course our major highway projects. We are continuing to build a new infrastructure and invest in facilities that help improve life in Lincolnshire for all residents, visitors and businesses. In adult care, we're planning further improvements to day services and housing projects for both extra care and working age adults. In children's services, we have invested over £100 million. Pupils with complex needs can attend their nearest special school. In this budget, there's a further £30 million for the Grantham Southern Relief Road and more than £4 million for the start of North Highcombe Relief Road. £1.2 million will be spent on the electrification of Cross Keys Bridge at Sutton Bridge. £1.5 million has been allocated for businesses and growth at Horncastle Industrial Estate. To meet the Environment Act requirements, we have invested £6 million in our waste transfer station. A further £1.5 million will be invested in LED lighting, leading to reductions in energy consumption and future costs. And I can't talk about investing in our county and in our future without mentioning our ambitious proposal for devolution for Greater Lincolnshire. As part of our devolution plan, we have already a one-off capital fund of £20 million from the government to spend on projects in Lincolnshire that meet our devolution ambitions. This is for projects within our remit and that we can deliver at pace in 24-25. I started by talking how we have managed to stay strong in a financial position against the odds, so we can keep investing in our county and do the things that we know really make a difference to people's lives. Today, I am proud to present a budget which will again provide good services across the board and deliver an ambitious future programme, whilst keeping council tax as one of the lowest in the country for our residents. I would now like to formally move the recommendations as outlined on pages 5 and 6 of the order of proceedings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Leader. So is there a seconder, please? I'm sure there is. Councillor Mark Whittington?
Yes, indeed, Mr Chairman. I would like to second these proposals and reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now I'd like to turn to Councillor Karen Lee who would like to move an amendment. So, and this be on behalf of the Shadow Executive. Councillor Karen Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose the opposition amendment to the council budget. It's my first budget as group leader, and I'd like to begin by thanking all of the officers for supporting me with the information and the numbers. They've been really helpful. I'm not going to say, like Robert did, that Councillor Hill's speech was useless, because I didn't think it was. And actually, our counter-proposals aren't so very far away from the controlling group's proposals. So I'd appreciate it if you just hear me through and just give them some thought. I'm under no illusions about how likely we are to get them through, but anyway. So initially, the opposition group did look at the possibility of using the £7.8 million pre-election gift from central government to maintain the present rate of council tax, whether that meant not increasing it at all or increasing it by less. But the implications of that going forward are significant, so we decided that really probably wasn't a good idea, especially in the present economic climate. So last night I went through the information in the budget book. It's that big, and I really did go through it. It's quite a read. And I did the financial sums because I've been told by officers that every 1% increase in council tax means an extra cost of £15 a year to a resident in a Band D property. So a 5% council tax increase meant £75 more annually, or about £1.50 weekly. And if you think about it at the minute, there's not that much that you can buy for £1.50 a week. And I also recently saw a communication from the County Councillors Network, and they've just published a report which states that out of 136 county and unitary local authorities in England who've so far published their budget proposals, 128, that's 95% of them, are raising their council tax by the maximum permitted. And that's despite the last-minute injection of £600 million by government last month. So council leaders across the country are saying we've got to put council tax up because a decade of, I'm sorry, but Conservative government budget cuts have almost decimated local government finances. And I explained to our group that on balance, I felt that the increase in council tax by LCC was something that residents could feel that was worthwhile. It does say in this document that I just mentioned, if you go to page 76, the conclusions from the consultation, the largest proportion of respondents felt that the lower increase, the 2.99%, should be chosen with the highest use of reserves. Their reasoning related to affordability among households, perceived waste, and sitting on money. Where have we heard that before? The smallest proportion of respondents supported the executive's preference for the largest increase, that's the 4.99, and their reason for supporting that was they said that vulnerable people need support and the county is better with quality services that receive investment. So I thought, okay, we need to increase the council tax. So coming back to our own LCC budget, in truth, as I've said, there isn't a lot of difference between what the Conservatives are proposing and what we'd like to see. Out of the total 7.8 million extra funding allocation, we'd only spend a relatively small proportion differently. My first comment will be to say that we absolutely support the £1 million extra funding for the Green Master Plan delivery. We're really pleased that was included. Moving on, going back to the beginning of this month when we first looked at our proposals for a balanced alternative budget, we initially looked at allocating some funding so that we could make up to the cuts to a PCSOs across the county. Because I think, in truth, right across this chamber, whether people admit it or not, that decision was one that a lot of us were unhappy about. And the impact of those cuts on our communities has been substantial. Because even though PCSOs were the eyes and ears of our community, they were hugely valued, and the numbers were cut, and we didn't like it. When I spoke to officers, though, we were told that that ship sailed, and getting them back isn't really going to happen or be an option. So we looked at other potential ways of tackling crime and keeping the communities that all of us in here represent safe. And in our alternative budget at the beginning, we'd plan to include proposals to establish a bespoke antisocial behaviour team. So we're really glad to see that in your budget, and we'd agree that the allocation of an extra £1 million of LCC money to top it up and sustain it is something that we'd absolutely support. And we think, given the cuts to our policing service by central government and locally to the PCSOs, that's money well spent. So next, we very much support the extra funding for flooding and drainage measures. We think better planning for prevention and tackling flooding should be a priority for this council and for national government. And we were really pleased last month that we had such a thorough discussion at it at full council, and that we managed to highlight that, and that exec then agreed to spend a bit more money on it, 4 million I think it is, at the beginning of this year. And yesterday, quite a few of us went to Witham House. It was a cross-party discussion, and there were people there from all kinds of different people who knew all sorts of things about flooding, very well-informed people, and the Shadow Minister for Floods, Emma Hardy. And we just discussed how we tackle flooding across the county, and that's work we're going to follow up in the coming months. Afterwards, we went up to Lincoln North Fire Station to speak to firefighters to ask about their experience on the ground. And again, we're really glad to see the extra 400,000 on fire and rescue flood response. We would just, though, we want to spend a little bit of money somewhere else. So we'd spend just £323,000 less on flooding. But that's out of almost, I made the numbers 3 million of your proposal. So it's a very, very small amount. And it's only so we'd have money for other important services. And I'll come to those services later. The thing that we don't support is the amount of extra funding for the highways budget. Last February, the Conservative members of this council voted to spend an extra 7 million on the highways budget. Then in September, the same year, an extra 10 million. And that's 17 million already last year. And now, just 12 months later, another 2.5 million. So that's nearly 20 million extra just for highways, extra on top of what they get anyway in 12 months. We think that's both unfair and excessive. And I looked in the consultation responses for some kind of rationale, because we always get told that's what people want. And at the top of page 76, bearing in mind we've got a county population, I'm told, of around 750,000. We got 1,100 responses to this consultation. And I'll read you what it says. The most frequent comments are shown below. Vulnerable people and those with protected characteristics were mentioned 24 times, both positively and negatively affected by changes. This was in context of being most likely to need services, but also to feel the impact of increased costs. And there's a bar chart. Pressure on households' affordability is the biggest result in the consultation. People spoke out the most. Then there was reserves usage. Then there was service provision. And fourth down the list was highways. So I'm sorry, but I completely recognise the numbers in this chamber, and I know, what the political choices are, the controlling group. This is their priority and their choice. But I'm sorry, you've yet to show me the evidence that it's actually the choice of residents. You can talk about it, but I can't see evidence in here. So, and as well as that, we're spending extra money from the devolution money on highways. We're absolutely throwing money at highways. And I'm not saying that, we don't want to or don't need to. I saw Councillor Davies on the news last night bemoaning the fact that we haven't got enough money and we do more if we have it. But, he's a Conservative councillor and we've got a Conservative government, so pass the buck. So quite simply, we feel the service areas that we've focused on for a little bit of extra money actually are important too. They're no less important than highways. And I'll be told, of course, that we already spend a lot of money on these areas, but we spend an absolutely huge amount of money on highways. That is just not deniable. So broadly speaking, our funding proposals for Citizens' Advice, Community Libraries Funds and the Holiday Activity Funds would be possible by spending very slightly less on the flood design work. We'd leave all of the rest of it alone, but we just want a little bit of money for something else. We'd leave all of the rest of it as it was. But what our proposal would do is reduce the allocation of extra funding to highways in order to spend some extra money on children's services, because we think all of those ought to be prioritised for extra spending, and because their importance continues to be ignored every time there's extra money in the kitty. I'd say I've got the greatest of respect for Councillor Bradwell, and I think we do well on children's services, but we could do more. We think it's important that some of that extra funding is used to support areas which help so many vulnerable people across Lincolnshire, and this consultation would actually bear that out. Those who need the support of organisations like Citizens Advice, I fought for 18 months to try and get them a better funding deal. Their funding was frozen between 2018 and 2024, and it's actually lost 22% since that time. I've got a chart of figures here that I've obtained, and they are accurate, and I can give the source if anybody wants it. So we've given £278,100,000 since 2018. I think I've got those numbers right. 278,000. Nerves. So it lost a little bit of value by 2019. It had gone down to being worth, in real terms, 240. Then it went down and down and down. It went down by 1% 20 to 21, 10% in real terms 20 to 21 to 22, and it goes all the way down until at the present day it's actually only worth 22% of what it was worth when we first awarded it. And to say we've given them extra money, I think we've given them just over £17,000, and that's after 5 years. So that's about 2.5k a year for 5 years, isn't it? And I don't need to tell you how far that goes in a cost of living crisis. So we think that awarding them a one-off sum of £50,000 would help to address that imbalance. They've identified that they'd need 53k just to keep pace with what their money was worth in 2018. One of the primary sources of support for residents during the cost of living crisis are the local community hubs, because many of the buildings don't just provide a library service. There's so much more. They can access counsellors, policing surgeries, leisure and community activities, borrow books and access the internet. And I mean, that's really important for all kinds of things. I think universal credit's just online, isn't it? There's lots of things you need the internet for, and not everyone can afford it. And you can get that in the library. Where I live, though, you can only get it on a Wednesday and a Thursday because it's only open 2 days a week, but that's a whole other story. They're also a warm hub, you know, somewhere people can go and sit when they can't afford to have the heating on. And I don't think that I need to remind colleagues that isolation and poverty are no less stark outside of the urban areas of the county. And I would like to see isolation and low income as being the 2 criteria for hubs if they wanted to apply for that pot of funding. The modest sum we're proposing should be spent, and it would assist the hubs who need extra funding the most, rather than giving a blanket amount right across all of the hubs. We think it should be for the ones that need it the most, for the criteria that I've said. So this time last year, when all the cash went on highways, as you recall, the opposition group lobbied for extra funding for the Holiday Activity Fund. It's an initiative which delivers huge support for children and families across the county, and it's way oversubscribed. I'm contacted by people who want to use it, and they tell me there aren't enough spaces. So the relatively small sum we're proposing could deliver such huge benefit to families who really need it. Again, in the consultation, they've said people want to see people who are under pressure because of the cost of living crisis and people who are vulnerable. And the last of our priorities, last in terms of being the last I mentioned rather than least important, I want to make it clear that since becoming leader, as I've said, I've got a much greater appreciation of what Councillor Bradwell achieves within children's services, and I pay tribute to those achievements. But we can always do more, and this extra allocation of 7.8 million would allow us to do more if we chose to do that and not spend as much on highways. Our group is proposing we spend an extra £1 million on a 1-year pilot scheme which would provide professional development to support staff in all schools who are meeting the needs of SEND pupils. Further to that, we are proposing we allocate extra money to the current SEND Workforce Development Programme, which would extend it for a further 2 years. We're proposing that LCC spend extra money on 4 county-wide intervention officers so that all children in the SEND and early intervention settings are supported and are able to achieve their educational entitlement and fulfil their needs. And finally, in terms of children's services, we'd like to invest in providing support in all schools by way of a programme which would develop school leadership, improve how our services work together, and enable schools to both support and be supported by their communities. And I absolutely appreciate that these are some very big asks, but the extra investment is so badly needed, and the resulting benefits would cut across so many areas of LCC statutory provision. And as I've said, I think it's notable that our priorities aren't so very different from the Conservative controlling group's priorities. We just spend a bit more on vulnerable people and a bit less on highways. The rest of the funding allocations are pretty much the same. I know from my experience, I've only been on here 3 years, but the Conservative group on this council simply don't break their group whip, not that I've seen. But I really do hope that councillors here today will give some real thought to the residents that you represent who are struggling, and think about the results of this consultation as well. The poorest, the most vulnerable across the county. Because ultimately, for me, this is absolutely about fairness. And we just don't think it's fair to allocate so much funding to the highways budget, 20 million extra since last February. Every single time there's any spare cash in the pot, they get it, and that simply isn't fair. We just want to see some fairness, and we want to see some money allocated elsewhere for the vulnerable people in this county that all of us represent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I must say that the late Robert Parker would be very pleased with your delivery. Well done. Thank you. So, can I ask, is there a seconder for this amendment? Yes, Councillor Phil Dilks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, particularly for what you just said about Rob Parker. I think you're right. He's looking down on us. Yes, I'd like to second the amendment as put forward by Councillor Lee and reserve my right to speak until prior to the leader summing up the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'd now like to invite other councillors wishing to speak to indicate by raising their hand, and both my Vice Chairman and Chief Exec will help me with those that wish to speak. And I'll just remind councillors that albeit we've suspended standing orders and whatever, these we're trying to limit to 3 minutes, please. So I understand Councillor Hilton-Spratt would like to speak firstly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a little confused because I understood the opposition leaders and deputy leaders, I understood they were due to alternate every year, and that doesn't seem to have happened. Which I thought was interesting. I think Councillor Lee attacked the Conservative group 9 times, and that was just in the last 3 sentences. I used to, do you know, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. Do you know, it's just occurred to me, when I was at school doing my O-levels, and I was at school, and we had a book which we had to read called A Tale of Two Cities. And while I was listening to Councillor Lee, it reminded me of that radical in A Tale of Two Cities, Madame Defarge. And the only thing that Councillor Lee hasn't got as she sits near the guillotine is knitting. Citizen Evremond to la guillotine. And it's all right, some of my friends and colleagues laughing. Councillor Davey, you'll be there. Councillor Hill will be there at the guillotine.
This has got very dark very quickly.
I do want to mention a more serious comment, because I have got a little bit of time left. The tremendous audacity of the Labour Party, because the Labour candidate in my patch is campaigning for more money to be spent on roads and footpaths. So what's going on here? And I tell you what, they've arranged through this alternative budget to cut £1.5 million off the proposed increase, or off the budget. Well, I represent an area called Swallowbeck and Witham. And already in the schedule are proposals for renovations on some of the roads and some of the streets in my area. St Margaret's Gardens, Wallace Avenue, Berkeley Drive. And we've got the Labour Party proposing to cut the budget for roads and footpaths in my area, when the local Labour person's actually campaigning for them. And I think this is just plain, total hypocrisy. It's all right, Councillor Lee, talking about what people have said in certain consultations. Well, to be fair to her, and that's all you have to be, fair, to be fair to her, she does talk to the local residents in her area. And Councillor Dyer and I talk to the residents in our area.
10 seconds.
We know one of the greatest issues, roads and footpaths. And so I welcome this money for highways, and I congratulate Councillor Hill on putting forward a magnificent budget in the financial circumstances.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hilton-Spratton, for a touch of theatre too. I thought that was always my gambit. Councillor Kev Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat everything Councillor Lee said, but today's budget is about choices. Our amendment simply is our choice and how to use the funds for the greatest benefit, we believe, for the people of Lincolnshire. Agree, the government cuts have resulted in how the budget has been delivered today. And if there was fair funding for the county, the budget and the amendments would be different. The amendment is actually investing in the future. It will not show immediate results, but it will benefit a great deal of people in the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sue Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just want to say to Councillor Lee and give you reassurance around citizens' advice. I know at least 2 others in the Chamber have had this letter, and I promise you I'm not going to read it all out to you, but this is actually from Lincolnshire CAB. And they point out that between March and October of last year, quite rightly, and you mentioned the wanting to know about the review that we were doing and taking place, what was actually happening as far as funding for CAB was concerned. And their words, not mine, we are very fortunate that Lincolnshire County Council has recognised the important preventative role that citizens' advice plays in Lincolnshire and has committed to 3-year funding. You will remember that Councillor Hill said that we've only had a 1-year budget, but because of that review, there is enough confidence that we've got to ensure that we give citizens' advice guaranteed funding for the next 3 years. Not only that, that we have agreed that we will lift it by the national living wage in each of those 3 years. And as you are aware, the national living wage for the current term is 6.2%. So I won't be supporting you £50,000 extra for citizens' advice, because I'm quite comfortable that they are receiving funding from us. And you must always remember as well that they do get funding from elsewhere. We don't have to give them any at all. They get funding from a variety of sources, including district councils as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Marion Overton, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it is a very important time for us, and I do take the points about whether the government is actually giving us the share that we need is a priority, and that's really where we're starting from. So bearing in mind that we are a low tax area nationally, and also we are in receipt of low funds nationally, it's amazing that we manage a budget at all, except that I'm really pleased to see we have this extra money coming in at this stage of £7.5 million. I think the important point I want to make is that there was a mistake in what Councillor Spratt said, because he said that our proposal was about cutting funds from highways. That's not so. If you read the proposal, it actually adds £1 million to highways. So that is an important point. No, we are not talking about cutting at all, with an extra £7.5 million coming in. That at £1 million is to go on highways. So I actually think that's a really important point, So it's not doing the extra, it's not doing as 2.5 million extra was proposed elsewhere, but it's not that, but it is there as £1 million on highways. The second point is about some of the other various authorities, various services that we wanted to highlight. And this is just about picking up some of these issues and making sure that we are all aware of what needs to be done for our residents, and I think we are, and I think there'll be significant sympathy from across the chamber about those important areas where we need to support. Secondly, I want to pick up the issue of flooding that has been demonstrated that it is very significant in so many areas with huge costs to individuals in their personal lives and also to their property. And this has been a really big issue for us. We have significant low-lying areas, as we all know, and some are in my area as well, which you perhaps wouldn't expect, but it's right across our county, and it's absolutely vital that we make sure we do our utmost to protect our properties for the long term. And also, not just properties, also, of course, the important farmland, as was mentioned earlier. So I do support those important principles, and I think this is as much an opportunity for us to raise those important issues as anything else. And I am pleased to see that issues we've raised before, such as the Green Master Plan, are in there. So it may not have been passed in the past, but it's there now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Patricia Bradwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things, because we haven't got much time, so I've got to be quick. Firstly, I'm grateful to your budget today, and thank you for supporting the antisocial behaviour 1 million. But just on the Holiday Activity Club, this Easter we've got 3,620 free school meal children attending. Obviously that's a cost of it will be £2.6 million. It's £600 a day for 6 weeks. Sorry, I've glasses. Yeah, the cost of one half place for 6 weeks is £600. So we have got enough money in there at the moment. If we were oversubscribed, and we were when we first started, but I think the numbers of children and families requiring this, activity club probably has levelled out a little. So there is money there actually to provide the service, and we do a lot of advertising around schools and in children's centres as well. So it's not that we're not trying to get more, but I think because it's in school holidays, a lot of families like to go away. But I just want to assure you, we are doing all we can. With regards SEND, and I think I've said this previously, is that we are working with the secondary sector to actually provide special needs provision for young people, because not all children, as I said, need to go into a special school. So that is work ongoing at the moment, and they're going to be hopefully strategically placed around the county for children to get the right education, but in a mainstream school. Do you know what I mean? So they can't sometimes cope with the classes they're in, but they will be in an environment where they will be able to carry on. And just again about the SEND workforce, we do work on that development with our special educational needs workforce. We work with the schools, and the staff there do get specialist training. They couldn't possibly have people not knowing how to actually work with children who have got additional needs, and some of them quite severe needs. So, again, I just wanted to say that to you, and we do 5,000 modules of training, every year to the staff as well. So there's lots out there. I mean, I don't know whether you've been to any of our special schools, have you? Right, invite to you and come out, because I think you'll actually be quite amazed
10 seconds.
Sorry, how they work. So, yeah, we'll get something arranged, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, most timely. Councillor Hugo Marfley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's always nice when certain sectors that we do support actually are highlighted, and I think Labour's done that in a sense. But of course, we are putting a lot of resources and extra cash into those services and are doing a good job. I think what we must remember, though, is at times we need to give to the majority of people and not always to the smaller groups. And in this case, everybody nearly uses highways. And flooding, as I've driven around Lincolnshire, has been widespread all over. And it's really important. And I think this is what, you know, the Conservatives have done very well, is to actually deliver for the masses. And I think that's very important. And I actually fully support the Conservative budget on that, because it's doing exactly what our residents want. They want some decent roads. I mean, just for the future, at least our mayor, if we do appoint a mayor, will be able to zip round Lincolnshire all over the place, because he's got a big area to cover. But the roads will be good, and that is essential. And the roads have been damaged by the flooding as well, the side of a lot of the roads. So, you know, it's good. The money's going in the right place and for the right and for the best for Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether the appointed gentleman or lady might actually be appointed some transport provision, but that's for another debate, probably on March the 13th. Councillor Alexander Morn, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I want to start by thanking Councillor Lee for writing tomorrow's headlines. The Conservatives are chucking money at highways, and I think that's something that our residents across Lincolnshire will welcome. I met yesterday with residents in a village called Brandon, in my division, where a number of people had suffered internal flooding to their property. We discussed at that meeting, as Councillor Davey mentioned earlier, around the number of Section 19 reports there are that need to be done. And I think residents in Lincolnshire expect them to be done timely, efficiently, and coherently, so that they can have the results back, why they have been a victim of flooding, and what agencies can do to support them. And the money that we're putting in this budget, make sure that we can do that swiftly, in line with the expectations of the public, and that's who we're here to serve. So I'm very keen to support that funding today. And not only that, the further additional investment we're putting into flood prevention means that they're not just going to have a report, a piece of paper at the end of this process, that we'll be able to put forward plans actually to safeguard our communities for the future and mitigate the risk of flooding. As we know, climate change is here, and we know that the persistent heavy rainfall we've had over the last few months is likely to happen again. So we're making that investment and that commitment to our communities, and I think that's something to be championed in this place. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well is the investment into Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. Many people don't realise that the response to flooding that's provided by the fire service isn't a statutory duty, but it's something that we do here in Lincolnshire, and they're often the first responders to those events. And this budget makes sure that our firefighters on the ground have the equipment that they need to both do their job safely and keep our communities safe. So I welcome the budget proposals today.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to add to that, I also am very pleased to see that there is provision for a new high pressure pump. I've always campaigned, as you well know, in this chamber to get not one but two, but one will help, so I'll keep campaigning for a second. Enough said. Councillor Neil Murray, please, your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to get as excited as my old friend Councillor Spratt was. But I do feel passionately in one direction the way he does. And it's ironic, Chair, in the division I represent, highways issues are absolutely vital, because we've got so many important roads running through the division. For example, this year, the County Council is going to spend millions of pounds outside here on Newland and on Carholm Road, very important roads in the county. And quite right too, because we need to do that. All our alternative seeks to do is to spend some of the extra money on other areas of the County Council's activity, because those other areas are equally as important to the people we all represent. So, Chair, it's about balance, and it's about spreading the extra money we've got in different areas.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tom Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Whichever way you cut it, a cut of £1.5 million that we're proposing that the Labour amendment takes away is a cut in highways funding. Let's get that clear before I make my point, Chairman. Councillor Lee proposes to cut the flood design work monies. That money is absolutely vital, because what that money does is it means when there is flooding, design work is done so that, as Councillor Moore has said, it's not just a Section 19 piece of paper our residents get, it's actually action. And I'm in a very high area, and my residents have been very badly affected in this flooding, and I know Councillor Fleetwood's residents have been even more so. So that money is absolutely vital. Councillor Lee references the vulnerable people of Lincolnshire. Well, without decent roads, the vulnerable people of Lincolnshire, however they get to these services, won't be able to, or their car will be damaged, which then they'll have to outlay to fix, or the service they use, their vehicle will be damaged, so it will have to be outlaid to be fixed. I am hugely proud that we've invested, and thank you for highlighting it, Councillor Lee, £20 million extra in our highways budget in the most difficult of circumstances. That 20 million, for example, Chairman, I have a scheme, and thanks to Richie Fenwick and Richie Davis in my division, on a Schedule 7 road that's going to be over £200,000. And what that scheme will do, Chairman, is it will fix a road that hasn't been maintained very well for a whole host of reasons, but it will also help keep a local business afloat in my area that employs a huge number of people, that's worth millions to the economy in Lincolnshire. And without that money, Chairman, the Schedule 7 roads, which actually have a heck of a lot in my division, we wouldn't be fixing our potholes in, we wouldn't be touching. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I will be supporting the budget, the budget that's been very well done by the leader for what the people of Lincolnshire actually want, which is to get on the job, make sure we protect their homes as best as we can from flooding, working with our statutory partners, and make sure we have roads that are good enough and appropriate for the people of Lincolnshire, which is what constantly we are told on the doorstep whenever there is an election. It's highways, drainage, every time. So we are delivering for the people of Lincolnshire, Chairman, and I'm proud to support the budget of the administration and won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, point
of order. There was some incorrect information again, and I do think we need to be clearer on this. If people turn to page 8 on the green sheets, yes, and read it, item 5 there, it says that they agree the following spending via the additional general fund capacity created by the final settlement. And then there's a heading that says additional investment. And in that line, under our proposal, is highways maintenance. And if you read across, it says £1 million. Let's be clear, this is an additional funding to what was represented by the original budget. Thank you.
Yes, as long as it is, yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I'm not disputing its additional funding from the settlement, Chairman, but whichever way you looked at it, an additional 2 million is more than additional 2.5 million is more than 1 million. So it is a cut. Where I've not said where the money's come from, Chairman. Thank you. So it's a cut.
Thank you.
Come what may, as Councillor Richard Davis will confirm, I think it's 5,400 miles of roads that we have to look after. Mike? Oh, well, I wasn't far out then. And there are our footpaths as well. Now then, let's move on. Councillor Tom Dyer, please.
Yeah. Chairman, before I do my speech, I have to clear something up, because for a brief period this week, I was actually a member of the Labour group due to an administrative error. So, colleagues, comrades, let me assure you, I'm proud not only to be a member of this council, but this council's controlling Conservative group. And Chairman, this county council, this Conservative county council, is continuing to significantly invest in our highways, investing in our flood team, delivering vital services for children's and adult services, all whilst delivering a balanced budget, unlike the Nottingham City Council, the Labour-controlled Nottingham City Council, Chairman. And I'm particularly pleased to see that we're also investing further in our public rights-of-way, an issue that I have particularly lobbied for in recent months, and hopefully next year there'll be even more in our public rights-of-way, Chairman. But I also welcome that we're continuing to move forward with the North Hycombe Relief Road, a £200 million project which will significantly reduce the rat running and congestion in the areas I represent. And since my election in 2021, I've been pleased to see millions of pounds spent on our roads across Waddington and Highcombe East. The people of Lincolnshire, Chairman, can be assured that under Conservative stewardship and under the steady hands of Councillor Hill, although I'm not going to pass comment on your microphone, I think we might need to invest a bit in a new wireless mic, but under the steady hands of Councillor Hill, this council is in safe and sustainable footing, and this council is better being run by Conservatives. What are the opposition proposing, Chairman? Not very much, really. But what I can see, they're proposing to spend £1.5 million less on our roads. Councillor Overton's nodding her head. She approves of that one there, so we have that on record. They're proposing to cut funding for our flood teams, specifically for flood design work. Shame, Chairman. What a shame. I think, Chairman, actually, the opposition have just written part of our election literature, as we only have a year to go until the county council election. And I quote Councillor Lee, "The Conservative administration is throwing money at highways." Chairman, I think we can all proudly say from this side of the chamber, yes, we are. And next year, when people go to the polls across Lincolnshire, voting for Conservatives is voting for a party that, yes, will be chucking money at highways.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I will not open a debate of whether the Labour Party would like you back as their representative or not. Now then, Councillor Colin Davey, please.
Well, that's probably apt that I follow my support councillor, and I'm sure my support councillor is now at the front of the queue for Madame Guillotine. I just want to touch on the issue that I deal with. I welcome the support from the other side of the chamber for the money that's going in through Councillor Hill's budget for some of the areas that I am responsible for. And I thank you for that. However, I have to pick up this issue on flooding design work and that cut to that funding. I want to explain something. In 2010, we were given the powers by government to investigate incidents of flooding. The government gave us no money for that role. So they gave us responsibility and no funding. Because of the events of this winter, we have decided as an executive to put additional money into this area, that £4 million announced previously. We now recognise that there are, we've got 850 people who've been forced out of their homes in many cases because their properties have been flooded. There is nothing more soul-destroying for our families in Lincolnshire than to have their properties that they live in, that are their homes, their rest, their places of stay, to be thrown out onto the street. Some people in Wainfleet were out of their homes for a year. There will be people who've been flooded this winter who will be out of their homes for at least 6 months to a year. And whether you live in Tallington, Wainfleet, Middle Raisin, or elsewhere in Lincolnshire, there are people that are absolutely, it's the worst possible thing that can happen to them. And the fear of flooding that many people now have as well is absolutely, it's their single most important priority. Therefore, when we take money out of a design work budget, it means that schemes that are necessary to actually resolve some of those problems can't be progressed. It means certain people will not get a scheme to protect them. That's why I argued so much at the executive that we put this money in. So to take it out is such a backward step. It's ridiculous. You can't say, you recognise the challenge, the problems, and then take money out of the budget that is designed to solve those problems. So, with the greatest respect, and I'm always helpful and I try and work with councillors across this chamber, this is a serious mistake. And quite honestly, we'll be supporting the Conservative budget because I think it addresses the needs that we have to address some of these challenges. And cutting money, I know you have a priority to do other things, but it's a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Can I call upon Councillor Stephen Bunny, please?
Thank you, Chair. When I started doing some maths, which I think we're talking about 0.2% of the overall expenditure, or somewhere like that, of this council. So we're only really looking very much at the margins. I think the important thing is, as a councillor, I came into local politics not necessarily to throw mud at one group or another. I wanted to support and serve the people of my area. And I totally agree. Most of the time, in fact, the majority of my days are spent dealing with highways issues, road issues, flooding issues. But on top of that, I also get issues to do with human suffering, people who are vulnerable, whether it be through education and things, but probably most so, in fact, in our area, through housing. And I do believe that, as I think we had from Councillor Hill, one of the things that we need to bear in mind as a council, it's not just highways, it's not just flooding, and we do need to remember these other issues as well and make sure that they are at the front of the debate as we come forward. We all know we could do with more money from government. We all know that we could do with more money coming into those systems, and that's what I would like to say that really our emphasis should be. Looking at this debate and these figures, I do wonder how much is actually going to come into the rural areas. Too much of this, even when we've looked at our small amounts here, will be going, I believe, to those people who live in the towns, not the people who live in Snitterby Car or Atterby, whatever it is or might be. And if you look at some of the roads around there, we think of bad roads in our towns, and I can think in Market Raisin of one or two very difficult roads. But I go out into Snitterby, and I can assure you I've done my car in 2 or 3 times there because I've forgotten how bad those roads are. So I think there really is, we mustn't forget that. I find what Councillor Davies said is absolutely right. Flooding, flooding, flooding is certainly the biggest worry for the majority of my area. I can go somewhere else, they're not so concerned because they haven't got the flooding there. So I'm in a bit of a dilemma. And I would like to see us over the years put more money into social vulnerability. And I think we need to, as I say possibly earlier, housing. Housing is our problem. We've got too many, not enough affordable houses or social housing for families. People in cramped conditions and causes difficulties. But I think we need to welcome the budget. I don't know quite which way I'm going to vote yet because I am concerned that actually I think that the proposals put forward in the amendment are right, but they're not actually going to have much influence on us in the rural areas. I think they would have more effect in the urban things. And so my view is we need to consider that as time goes on.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jackie Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I first thank both the Leader of the Council and the Leader of the Opposition for the very thoughtful and carefully prepared speeches that they gave this morning. Frankly, I think that bodes well for the future of this Council. So thank you both. The thing about the roads, and I'm going to support the budget as it stands, the thing about the roads is that they're the county circulation system. And the amount of extra that we're proposing here won't even cover the cost of a single roundabout that's proposed for my division. The costs needed to do the repairs that we need on an ongoing basis are just gargantuan. They're just beyond imagining at times, really. Also, one of the reasons I think that they need the extra money is that during this flooding, there's been significant extra damage, certainly in my division, been done because the utilities some of the utilities have been unable to get their own services under control. We've had tankers in Saxby absolutely ruining a road, causing potholes big enough to actually tip a tanker. And we've had highways officers out repeatedly in a way that they wouldn't normally have to if the flooding wasn't there. So we have the extra money needed to cater for these extra problems that we're facing. I was going to say something about the flood designs, but Councillor Davey has addressed that very carefully. I think it is important to realise that we do listen very respectfully to what the opposition groups say, and that can be seen in some of the committees where members give cross-party support to different ideas. And it is right that many of these proposals are similar to our own. However, in this case, I do feel that the budget proposals are correct as they stand, so I will be supporting them, and I won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockway. Can I call upon Councillor Paul Skinner next, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Much as Councillor Jackie Brockway has said, I think we are very lucky in this chamber for both sides to present a budget. On this case, I think Councillor Hill has actually prepared his bit better, and that's the one I'm going to be supporting. From the flood and drainage measures, I wholly support the ones in the proper budget proposed, and the highways maintenance. Now, I think Councillor Colin Davey has briefly come across some of the things here, but there is a big relationship between highways drainage and flood and water, as there are with the internal drainage boards. It's not just it's flooding or it's highways. There are some very interesting relationships, and then when we throw some of the other bits involved as well, you know, people's homes can get flooded. In fact, just like Councillor Bunny said, I've been out 2 or 3 times this week helping people report problems they have, which are complex issues that will require this investigation money, and we can only support them. The only other thing is that it's only a little one-liner on there. Fire and rescue, I'm a supporter of anything we can do to give the lads the best equipment they need. But the additional PPE equipment is actually dry suits so that they can do their jobs. The lads from Leverton Fire Station, when Wainfleet was flooded, had to go out in their standard kit in a lot of cases. They do not have a drying room presently at Leverton, and 3 sets of kit that are cold and wet and miserable to wear isn't the way to do things. But I will be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in what you've said with fire and rescue, it is also that they wear their leather boots, don't they, as well, and they don't dry out very quickly. I think we have a point of information, probably better put from Councillor Crawley than
yes,
perhaps myself.
thank you, Chairman. I thank Councillor Skinner for his support, but I can't let it pass. They are firefighters. They're not lads, they're not chaps, they are professional firefighters. And we have female firefighters as well. So thank you, Councillor Skinner. Could you just, bear that in mind? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Baxter, would you like to make your contribution, please?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say very much this afternoon, but Councillor Dyer always brings out the worst in me.
So he's going to join your party next rather than the Labour Party, is he?
As you know, I don't have a party.
No.
We do welcome, I do welcome the measures at the top of the page, the flooding and drainage measures, particularly the drainage and jetting, as I've said earlier on, long overdue in some parts of my ward, and the flooding team. The problems with flooding, as Councillor Davey pointed out at the flood meeting earlier this week, are a consequence of the underfunding of flooding by the national government, which happens to be Conservative. The EA, the Environment Agency, is massively underfunded for capital works, but more importantly for maintenance works. And a lot of the problems that have been caused lately in the Cubbit Wash and so on are a result of the underfunding of the EA. And also the internal drainage boards, as has been mentioned, we went to an event last week, because the internal drainage boards are in a funding crisis, which has an impact on those that fund them, namely the district councils. So I agree with Councillor Davey that it's a problem of national government. And earlier in the week, I think also I heard Councillor Davies on the radio saying that part of the problem with funding for highways is underfunding from national government, which happens to be Conservative. And so I'd like to say to Councillor Dyer that, yes, we may have written the leaflet for your next year's county council elections. I hope you'll also be going around with vigour campaigning for the correct party in any general election that we may face between now and next May. And there are other elections between now and next May, including the Grantham Town Council elections, but of course there are no Conservative candidates in those elections because, and I quote the links online, Grantham councillors dispute the idea that party politics affects local decisions. In their decisions, local Conservatives examined nearby councils, overwhelmingly agreeing that removing parties from local politics was preferable. I definitely agree that party politics should be removed from local government and hasten the day. But carrying on with the scheme, I welcome the antisocial behaviour measures, very much so. I welcome the fire and flood response. I welcome the adoption of the Green Master Plan measures. Oh, 10 seconds. But no one wants to see Councillor Dilks in a T-shirt again, so please give some money to the libraries as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Max. Councillor Danmack, sorry, Councillor Danny. Yep, Anton, yep. Have I got anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I will start my speech. It will be very short. I won't take a minute. It's a part of decision making, as all we know, is to make a difference, is to be brave and make a difference. The highways and the budget for the highways, we do have to understand that the roads are very essential for our economy, and it is something that we have to deal with, and that's the concern of most of the constituents and residents of Lincolnshire. And I do hope as well that Boston probably will get some improvement in the short term. It's easy to criticize a budget. However, can anyone come with another alternative, a full budget to discuss? And I think I would like to see that from oppositions, because there is a say, if you criticize others, you have a long way to go. But if you blame yourself, you are halfway there. If you don't blame anyone, you are already there. So I think I would love to see a budget from an opposition. However, what I would like, or what I would have liked to see, is probably adult education, because I think we haven't got probably a part. We have adult care and safety, and community and well-being. I think adult education, it will be very important for us, because that can save us a lot of money also. If we make sure that families and adults are well educated, we can probably reduce fly tipping, we can reduce littering, we can reduce antisocial behavior. And I'm very pleased to hear that we have a budget for social behavior of 1 million, and Boston is part of it. I'm very pleased to do that. The reason why I'm talking about adult education is because in Boston we have over probably 40% of our residents are from EU members, and some of them really, they lack English literacy and knowledge about our culture and values. Therefore, I would like to see it probably, and if we can have a bit of money to that and invest it in Boston and probably use it as a pilot scheme, so we can go all in one line of improving the well-being and the lives of our families, because that will be a key to even create a very fit, a future generation for this county and the country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I think I have a point of information coming from Councillor Patricia Bradford, which I was expecting, to be honest.
Sorry to correct you, Councillor, my friend. Yeah, we do have adult education. It's, the classes are run across the county, so I'll send you where they are in Boston. But more importantly, with the LEP, we have a learning and skills board underneath the LEP. We do so much with trying to get people back into work. So we've got a multiply programme, which is maths, that, you know, you can get a maths qualification. There's English as well in the college, and Boston College definitely does all that work for us, as well as the other colleges. So I think, you know, Mr. Chairman, we are doing a lot. Obviously, my colleague, I just need to just let him know what's happening in Boston. But, you know, those sorts of, all our towns and everywhere, Gainsborough, everywhere, we put on courses for people, and I think you can do them online as well, and at our colleges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, our adult learning profile, well described. So I'm going to call upon in a moment Councillor Colin Matthews as the last member that would like to contribute, and just so as I... Oh, I beg your pardon, I've got Councillor Tom Ashton after that. Right, that's fine, I'll do both of those. Then I'm going to do a reserve of speaking to both Councillor Mark Whittington and indeed to Councillor Dilks, and I'm hoping that will bring a lively debate then to an orderly sort of conclusion. So, having given a weather forecast of that, an indication, over to Councillor Colin Matthews, please. There's no rain in my weather forecast.
Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with Councillor Lee. There is not much difference between the proposed budget and the tabled amendments. I welcome the additional spend on flooding. I want to raise the point of farm flooding. Farm flooding is a direct economic loss to farming. Indeed, flooding losses are forcing some farmers out of business. Farming is a key economic driver for Lincolnshire. We should nurture our farmers more. I welcome the additional spending on CAB and the fact that our proposed spending is better rationalised across the county in our proposals. Our coastal areas do need much better access to CAB. However, CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau, does not feature much in my inbox. The two big reoccurring topics outside pylons are highways and antisocial behaviour. I want to place some sense of perspective on highway spending. My residents don't call it highways or roads. They call it dangerous potholes and damaged footways and failing verges. And there are loads of them in my patch. Lincolnshire is massive and much of it rural. It takes me 1.5 hours to drive here. This morning I hit 4 potholes. If my residents were setting the budget, they would double the highways budget, not cut it. So you'll be upsetting huge swathes of Lincolnshire by proposing a cut. I'm pleased we're putting money into antisocial behaviour. The police are failing my residents in Alford because they do not seem to take antisocial behaviour seriously. I know it's not a unique thing to problem. So to close, I thank Councillor Lee for amendment. I won't be backing it, but the discussion has enabled us to understand why the proposed budget is a well-constructed and thought-out budget in the current climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So, can I call upon Councillor Tom Ashton next? I seem to think I'd lost him in my pecking order, which I do apologise for.
No
Might have been something to do with political banter, I think, at the time, in my defence.
No worries at all, Mr Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillor Bunny for doing the statistical analysis that the Chamber is in broad agreement on all but a very, very, very tiny amount of the overall budget. And I think I can take that, I hope we can all take that, as a vote of confidence in the management of this council's finances, not just this year, but over a much longer period, that enables us to approach a budget this time that is looking to put investments into areas where we know we need it, rather than to reduce spending in any of these areas. And one of the reasons for that is clearly taking those difficult decisions over the longer period to invest where we need to do and to change the way that we do things. However, I couldn't in all conscience, in a year when over 800 properties have been flooded across Lincolnshire, when the Flood and Water Scrutiny Committee, which I'm privileged to chair, is is taking through a detailed review of those flooding events, support an alternative which reduces the amount of money proposed for flood design work. This council has put in already £4 million into investigation. We're putting £2 million into jetting and associated works. But there's no point putting the money into the investigations if we're not prepared to put the full amount into doing the design work, which hopefully will lead to the scheme that prevents flooding in future years. Similarly, I couldn't support a budget that proposed a smaller increase in the amount of money for highways than the budget proposed by the leader. As with Councillor Matthews and others, the communities that I represent down in the Fens wouldn't mind a heavier increase in council tax if it meant that we could put every penny of that into repairing their roads. This is how they feel. I was at Coningsby Town Council last night. I shall be at Tumby on Monday, and this is the message that I get meeting in, meeting out. I am proud that we've got a budget that I can take to our parishes and say that in a difficult year we are continuing to invest in highways, we are continuing to invest in flood prevention, and we are continuing to invest in adult social services and all of the things that our communities rely upon. And that, Mr. Chairman, it is a good budget and it has my full support.
Thank you very much. Very timely. Councillor Cleaver, you'd like to contribute?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to speak in favour of the amendment, but I would just like to point out that people are being a little bit disingenuous about the highways increase. If you look at page 67 in the budget book, it says there's a planned £509,000 increase for highways in the base budget on 43 million. That's only 1%, if that. So that's not much of a commitment, is it, when inflation's running at 4%? If you look at the sum of the precepts for business rates and the precept, that is bringing in an extra £34 million at the bottom of the page. But only £500,000 of that's going to highways. Again, that's less than 1% of that increase income to the council is going to highways. It looks to me a little bit as if someone saw that that was a mistake and that wasn't enough for highways, hence 2.5 million of the 7 million having to be suddenly rushed into the amendment to boost the highways figure. And I understand that. Fair enough. We do need to increase investment in our highways. That is not in question. That is not in question. But it is a little bit disingenuous to say that you've always been looking after highways and prioritising them when the figures in there do not bear that out. So, and I would also point out, again, a very welcome, thank you, Councillor Davey, £4 million extra capital already in the budget for floods. And let's face it, flood is something that needs capital money, probably more than it does revenue. And I welcome that. So in the context of 4 million extra for capital, simply putting down the flood design extra by 300,000 isn't as massive a deal as people are trying to make out either. And I would support my colleagues here. The additional funds that we are suggesting, the minor changes to the budget suggestions for the 7.7 million, are things that are all needed. They are also things that will affect people's lives. I know, I take the point about hitting potholes. I hit potholes. We all hit potholes. But there are also people in our society who are more needy than those of us that drive around in cars. And we need to show that we're a compassionate council and we care about those people too. I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cleaver, for your interpretation. Now, we'll get back to seconding, and I will invite the opportunity to Councillor Mark Whittington to have his say.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I thought it was very... Listened to the budget speech presented by Councillor Hill, and it was, important points he made that, we're spending over £600 million this year. Well over 65% of it, of our expenditure goes on key issues that are person-centred, adult social care and children's social care. And Councillor Hill also referred to the fact that because we are such a well-run council, and we have been for very, very many years now, we're in a very, very fortunate position in comparison to lots of other councils. I mean, up until probably 6 months, a year ago, those councils that had gone into financial difficulties and issued Section 114 notices had got there because they did something wrong. I'm talking, you know, whether it's Croydon or Slough, Northamptonshire. I'll be fair, Thurrock. Some of those are Conservative, some are Labour. But it's because they did something out of the ordinary. And that's why they got into financial difficulties. But at the recent CCN conference last autumn, I was speaking to, as well as Councillor Hill and Councillor Brown was there as well, speaking to leaders of some currently very, very well-run councils that haven't been doing this kind of stuff that other councils have. And they are all in financial problems, far, far worse than us, having to look to make very, very real cuts to services next year. And that's something that here at this council, we're in a very fortunate position that we're not doing. In fact, okay, the extra funding we've got is government largesse that has come our way, so that's fine. But I think it's really important to make that point. Secondly, I would like to thank Councillor Lee for what I thought was a very, very fair speech, and she made some very, very good points, especially, Councillor Lee, around your understanding acceptance of the need to put the precept up to get it into the baseline because of the recurring impact in the future. I think that's a very, very, very important point to make. It's not just about this year, it's about protecting the baseline for future years. So I very much welcome those comments that you actually made, because I think it's really, really important that everybody, not just in this chamber, but in the county as a whole, understands the importance of that. Yes, and also to highlight that 95% of councils have had to go to the maximum because of where we are. Now, at some, obviously, we are aware that either this year or the very early part of next year, I suspect it'll be this year, there will be a general election. There will be a new government of whatever persuasion. And I really hope that whatever the new government's persuasion is, they just seriously look at the funding of local authorities and local government, because I think it's long overdue, as is looking at fairer funding. And then, of course, there's also that big sort of iceberg of adult social care that's looming towards us as well. So I hope that comes. Let's go back now and look at some of the proposed amendments, so the proposed additional investment that the Conservatives are proposing. We've identified the really, really core areas that, you know, flooding. I mean, we're probably all aware of the moment of flooding. I've got flooding in my areas. My next door neighbour had a flooding issue, and part of my garden got flooded. So when it happens like that, it becomes very, very real and personal to you. I've got two of my villages that if the flooding works out against them, they can actually, both the villages actually be completely cut off. So I welcome the extra investment in flooding because it's a real issue. Again, highways, well, okay, the figure's been given that if we do spend this extra 2.5 million, that'll be 20 million extra in 12 months. And I think that's something that Conservatives should be really proud of. But let's not get complacent over this. Every year, the AA do an annual sort of appraisal of all the roads in the country to work out how much of backlog maintenance is still there. A report that they issued in August of last year, it was speaking about £14 billion across the country. And they estimated that the Lincolnshire share, that was in the region of 200 to 220 million. So that is what the AA are saying. So that 20 million extra is only really going to maybe work out to 10% of that essential backlog maintenance. You know, we are throwing extra money at highways because there are issues there with backlog maintenance. We're also aware, and certainly I've become aware in my area recently, that all of the extra surplus water that's been on our roads has actually exacerbated the problems with potholes. You drive down one road and then go down a couple of days later, and the pothole that was there is substantially bigger because the water is just washing everything away. So I'm fully supportive of the needs and why we need to focus in on flooding and highways maintenance. In terms of the amendments that have been proposed by the opposition, well, I think both Councillors Woolley and Bradwell have actually provided sort of reassurance around the funding for both citizens' advice and also for SEND and for children's services. So I think they've been adequately covered. So on that basis, I would encourage all members of this council to support the Conservative budget with our additional investment items and not support the opposition amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And now I'd like to invite the opportunity for Councillor Dilks to have his right to say as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I first thank the Council Leader for his usual competent way in which he presented his budget statement and to the mostly sensible contributions from across the Chamber. I also thank the Leader of the Opposition, who I've worked with over recent weeks, which has resulted in the Shadow Cabinet amendment. Thanks to all our officers who have worked hard, I know, on both the proposals and our amendment, which has helped both sides compile our choices, which is what they are, particularly on how best to use the 7.9 million pre-election grant from government. You'll recall that in last year's budget debate, given the widespread and frankly deep concerns in many communities over cuts to police community support officers, cut from 149 officers when the current Police and Crime Commissioner came to office to just 50 today, 2/3 cut. That's a real cut, I've got to tell you guys over there. We lobbied a year ago for this council to step in and fund at least a few PCSOs, as the council has done in the past. But that idea was voted down by the administration. So over recent weeks, we've been looking and worked up a proposal in the Shadow Cabinet as to launch a county council team of antisocial behaviour officers to help fill a real gap and at the same time fulfil this council's obligations to tackling antisocial behaviour. I believe we've seen an increase in antisocial behaviour across the county since we lost PCSOs. My parish council public forum this week was dominated with complaints about one youngster causing chaos, tearing around the village on an unlicensed trail-type motorbike, and complaints of lack of police response. So we are delighted on this side to support a very similar proposal as outlined by Councillor Hill for such measures. We also worked on plans for flooding and drainage measures. Again, we welcome those plans as proposed by Councillor Hill, with a slight amendment from us, including the additional resources to enable our fire service to tackle floods more effectively. It's actually, Mr. Chairman, the 4th such pump they're going to get, and which we welcome. You may also recall in previous budget debates, we on this side highlighted the fact that despite this council adopting, very welcome, a green master plan, it was severely underfunded. Our proposals were rejected previously, but I'm pleased to see an extra £1 million earmarked for that very purpose today. So I can say there is real cross-party consensus in much of the proposals. We're also aware, of course, of the need to continue to tackle the backlog of pothole repairs and recognise that over the past year, this council has managed to pour an extra £19 million into highways and potholes. The ruling group are today proposing to add another £2.5 million to highways to that pot, no pun intended, of course, to take the additional funding to £21.5 million into highways over the last year. As your Shadow Cabinet, we'll be voting for an extra £1 million for highways today. An extra £1 million for highways today, which will see that extra pot expand to £20 million over the period. And it's a question of balance. And our recent consultation, the council's recent consultation, as Councillor Lee said, shows that the highways isn't the highest priority, it's the fourth from people. That's our own consultation as published today. So what we're proposing would allow us as a council to make a difference in a number of other priority areas, not just highways, currently facing cost pressures. In particular, as you'll see, special education needs, giving more children who qualify the chance to benefit from our excellent holiday activity fund places, helping CAB answer more calls for those struggling with the cost of living crisis, creating a modest fund to help our community hub libraries, hence the T-shirt. These are the choices we face today, and of course extra money for special education needs. Our proposals, Mr. Chairman, are sensible. They won't break the bank, but they will respond to the priorities that we see on this side and that make a real difference to the lives of those who need us most. I urge you to vote for the amendment and say thank you very much for an excellent debate. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dowds. And I would also like to thank all members in the Chamber for a lively and well-behaved debate. I think it's been beneficial in our deliberations. Can I now invite and call upon our leader, Councillor Hill, if you'd like to respond?
Thank you,
please.
Chairman. Can I just echo those comments? Certainly, personally thank Councillor Lee for her, I think, very well presented and very clear amendment, and all members. And actually, not a lot for me to say, because it has been a really good debate, actually a good humoured debate, but actually all the points were debated. So, as somebody said, these are all about choices, aren't they? So I think everybody listening in or everybody sitting here can see what the choices we have debated very well, I think. I think most of the points have been covered. I think Councillor Cleaver was a little bit unfair with saying rushed. As he well knows, the government suddenly announced extra money last minute. So again, we were given choices now, which is why we're having this debate with the extra flexibility we've had. I just want to, I mean, obviously the highways debate's pretty clear. Yes, it is. What it boils down to is we want to spend more on highways than we currently were planning to. You want to spend a bit less. That's the truth of the matter. So I take the point there. I think just to be clarified on the PCSO and the antisocial behaviour issues, Councillor Bradwell, I mean, if the Council agrees this proposal, we'll then be working up some proposals how this Council can actually use that one-off money. We're talking about not recurring money. And just for information purposes, I understand the Police and Crime Commissioner has separately put a bid in to government for potentially £1 million for that sort of issue. So we're not saying here that we're going to start funding PCSOs or any police work. It's something we will, I think, come up with independently what we think we should be doing in addition to the work we already do, because we do a lot of work already in terms of, I forget what the phrase is, with the families and what have you. We've got a lot of work where we work with troubled families and people like that, and actually it is working. So there will be a proposal coming forward which will be our proposal, but obviously as that rolls forward, once it's gone through scrutiny, obviously it will try and make sure it coordinates with what other people are doing. So apart from that, Chairman, I think there isn't a great deal of difference in the proposals. It is a choice over some of the margins. So I would continue to move that Councillor Whittington and my motion, and then we will rest there. And unfortunately, we will not be supporting the opposition amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we all look forward to further advice as to the potential funding to apply to antisocial behaviour, which affects all of our community. Okay, so can I please call upon our Chief Executive to do a recorded vote by the Shadow Executive. So Debbie, it's over to you. I understand that's the protocol.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're now voting on the Shadow Executive announcement. I will read out... amendment. I will read out the name of each member. Would those voting for say yes? For those voting against say no? And those abstaining say abstain. So Councillor Allen.
No.
Councillor Ashley Morris. Councillor Ashton.
No.
Councillor Baxter.
Yes.
Councillor Bowles. No. Councillor Mrs Boquet. No. Councillor Mrs Bradwell OBE. No. Councillor Mrs Brockway.
No.
Councillor Briggs.
No.
Councillor Brooks.
No.
Councillor Bunny.
No.
Councillor Boutroyd.
No.
Councillor Carter.
No.
Councillor Corey.
No.
Councillor Kev Clark.
Yes.
Councillor Mike Clark.
No.
Councillor Nicola Clark.
No.
Councillor Cleaver.
Yes.
Councillor Cook.
No.
Councillor Coupland.
No.
Councillor Danny.
No.
Councillor Davey.
No.
Councillor Davies.
No.
Councillor Dilks.
Yes.
Councillor Dyer.
No.
Councillor Fleetwood. Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
No.
Councillor Griggs.
No.
Councillor Higgs.
No.
Councillor Hall.
No.
Councillor Hassan.
Yes.
Councillor Hill OBE. Councillor Kendrick.
No.
Councillor Key.
No.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor Lee.
Yes.
Councillor Macy.
No.
Councillor Marfleet.
No.
Councillor Martin.
No.
Councillor Matthews.
No.
Councillor Morn.
No.
Councillor McNally.
No.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Mrs Overton MBE. Councillor Pepper.
No.
Councillor Perrotton Williams.
No.
Councillor Mrs Rawlins.
No.
Councillor Reid.
No.
Councillor Sear.
No.
Councillor Skinner.
No.
Councillor Smith.
No.
Councillor Sneath.
No.
Councillor Spratt.
No.
Councillor Stokes.
No.
Councillor Strengle.
No.
Councillor Tyrrell.
No.
Councillor Mrs Vernon.
No.
Councillor Whittington.
No.
Councillor Mrs Woolley.
No.
Councillor Wotton. Councillor Young.
No.
Right. So the outcome of the amendment is that there was 8 people for it and 53 against, and there were no abstentions. Okay, so we are now going to do another recorded vote.
Thank you very much. We're now voting on the Conservative group motion. Again, I'll read out the name of each member. Would those voting for say yes, those voting against say no, and those abstaining say abstain. Councillor Allen. Councillor Ashley Morris. Councillor Ashton.
Yes.
Councillor Baxter.
Yes.
Councillor Bowles.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Boquet.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Bradwell OBE.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Brockway.
Yes.
Councillor Briggs.
Yes.
Councillor Brooks.
Yes.
Councillor Bunny.
Yes.
Councillor Boutroyd.
Yes.
Councillor Carter.
Yes.
Councillor Corey.
Yes.
Councillor Kev Clark.
Yes.
Councillor Mike Clark.
Yes.
Councillor Nicola Clark.
Yes.
Councillor Cleaver.
Yes.
Councillor Cook.
Yes.
Councillor Coupland.
Yes.
Councillor Danny.
Yes.
Councillor Davey. Councillor Davies.
Yes.
Councillor Dilks.
Yes.
Councillor Dyer.
Yes.
Councillor Fleetwood.
Yes.
Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Griggs.
Yes.
Councillor Higgs.
Yes.
Councillor Hall. Councillor Hassan.
Yes.
Councillor Hill OBE.
Yes.
Councillor Kendrick.
Yes.
Councillor Key.
Yes.
Councillor King. Councillor Lee. Councillor Macy.
Yes.
Councillor Marfleet. Councillor Martin? Councillor Matthews? Councillor Morn? Councillor McNally? Councillor Murray? Councillor Mrs Overton MBE? Councillor Pepper? Councillor Perrotton Williams? Councillor Mrs Rawlins? Councillor Reid?
Yes.
Councillor Sear? Councillor Skinner? Councillor Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Sneath? Councillor Spratt? Councillor Stokes? Councillor Strengle? Councillor Tyrrell? Councillor Mrs Vernon? Councillor Whittington? Councillor Mrs Woolley? Councillor Wotton? And Councillor Young.
Thank you very much, officers, for your help and support. So I can announce that, and it is with great pleasure to be able to announce the motion is carried by 61. That's everybody in the House this afternoon. There was nobody against, obviously, and no abstentions. So, members, the budget is now set. Can I now draw our attention to, with the budget set, to the pay policy statement for 24-25 and call upon the leader, Councillor Hill, to actually
Thank you.
tell
There
us
are
more
no
about
changes.
the proposal.
I'm sorry, Chairman. There are no proposed changes to our pay policy statement for the ensuing year. The Pay Policy Committee met, I think, last week. So it is a mandatory report which has to be brought to the Council. There are no changes to the policy, so there was, it wasn't a long meeting, shall we say, so I just move it.
Thank you very much indeed. And a seconder, please. Councillor Bunny.
Thank you. I'm happy to second the paper as stated.
Thank you very much. Do I have any speakers at all? No. We'll now move to the vote then, please, on this one. And can I ask for all of those in favour? It's carried. Thank you very much. Anybody against to be recorded? No. And any abstentions? No. There we are. That's the pay policy then. So now moving on to item 9, the Audit Committee annual report of 2023. Before actually introducing this to Councillor Sue Rawlins, I'd just like to, from the chair, I've sat in this chamber on many annual budget meetings, and you have done some very valued work, and I'd just like to say thank you for the work that you do, because as doing the auditing, it's quite an onerous and sometimes not a terribly thrilling situation, but you do it very valiantly, so thank you very much. I'm sure other members would join me in saying so. I probably said too much in an official capacity, but that wouldn't be unusual now, would it? So over to you, Councillor Rawlings, to introduce, please, the Audit Committee Annual Report of 23.
Thank you for your much appreciated compliments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and I've endeavoured to fulfil my role as best I can in the coming months, etc. So thank you once again. So we have the annual audit report before us today, a little later than usual. We often have it in December. That is a consequence on this occasion of actually having to wait for the external auditor's report, which we'd like to bring all in together. Obviously, the nature of our work is there as listed, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our officers who presented assurance statements to us, and all our members of the committee for their diligence in the questioning and attendance at those meetings. Very much appreciated. Basically, as Councillor Hill has alluded to, we have acknowledged the pressures on adult social care, and we have actually done some questioning and sought some assurance regarding market supply, which is very important in terms of the types of models we have in Lincolnshire, which tend to be smaller caring institutions, and how that trend may pan out in the years to come. Again, as I referred to earlier, we have had some delays, not of the council's making. I have to say there's been national policy issues and the interpretation of detailed accountancy regulations in terms of the actual signing off of the accounts, not the publication of them. Technical matters regarding the valuation of assets. And that has now been concluded, and I would like to thank our external auditors for assisting us in that. And they have diligently come and given assurances to the committee over time when we've been concerned that those sign-offs have not been done. Again, not a matter that the council itself could do anything about, purely a national issue regarding the evaluation of infrastructure assets, i.e. our highways. In that, also looking forward to the development areas. Again, we're going to do some more training on risk and risk appetite and tolerance in the council. I think that's very important in view of the uncertainties we're going to face. And also looking at those section 114 issues, which Councillor Whittington referred to earlier, which have been a great source of problems to some of our colleagues in other councils. So, you know, sound financial resilience and financial management, I think, have got to be the key in all this these deliberations. So thank you again for everyone who's assisted us during the year, and I hope that gives some assurance to the other members of the council who are not on our committee. So thank you once again, and I'd like to propose that the council move the paper as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rawlings. Of course, property assets are always a very difficult one. Can I invite a seconder, please, for this? Yes, thank you, Councillor Allen.
I second the statement in the papers relating to the audit report.
Thank you very much indeed. So we'll now move to the vote on this. And oh, I beg your pardon. Leader.
Briefly, Chairman, I'd just like to publicly thank Councillor Rawlings and her committee, plus the finance team. As she just said, there is a bit of a national crisis going on with external audits being completed. And I think some councils are about 4 years out of date. And we are almost unique that we're virtually up to date with our external audit reports. And that, I think we should acknowledge both the work of the audit committee, but also our finance team, who I know have had a very challenging time getting the latest relevant budget accounts agreed. So I think we should acknowledge that because it is quite an achievement.
Thank you very much indeed. Conscious that we've been going for just 3 hours, so I was rather hoping we'd managed to conclude. So are there any more speakers to the audit? No, there is not. So thank you very much. So I'll put it to the vote, please. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please. Thank you. It's carried. Anybody against or abstentions? No, that's lovely. Well, thank you very much, members, for all attending in such a good manner as well. And that concludes the meeting. I look forward to conducting the extra council meeting, which I remember from memory is March the 13th, which is a one-item agenda for devolution. Thank you very much.